Fired up. And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Deeper Dive. It is Monday, November 18th. I am Josh Engleman. I'm joined by Chris Spags. We're brought to you by us. You can get our free tools by clicking the link in the description, and you should do that. We'll talk about it in a little bit. 6-game DraftKings slate. They dropped the late games, the 10 and the 10:30. 8-game slate on FanDuel. So we're talking about two slightly different things today, but we're going to break it all down. We've got plenty of time to do so before lock gets started. So hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live, and follow us both on Twitter. What's good, Spags? How was your weekend?
It was good. It was honestly, I'm a little bit tired still. I feel like from the weekend of watching fights that frankly were not that great and kept me up much later than I'd like to be. So that's the tough part for this, but I like Monday basketball slates. Like when there was an NFL game going, I feel like we have a little bit of an edge. We're doing the work here. Got some questionable guys, some guys that might be out that would matter a lot for the slate. So fun slate. And I know I heard some of your fight takes before. I didn't know that you were so vociferous in filleting John Jones though, which makes me think slightly less of you, Josh.
Oh, you don't like when I talk about the greatest person that's ever done it, continuing to do it at the best level possible?
Jake Paul in boxing, though, like for sure. I don't think that's a for sure.
Without question, he's so much bigger than him. Yeah,
but he's also kind of fat right now on purpose for the heavyweight stuff, which I don't know if he would be for a boxing thing.
He would fuck up Jake Paul in a boxing fight. That line would be preposterous. He would never. Jake would never take that fight.
I'd like to see it. I just wish I liked John Jones more as a person. And I loved him when he first came out. Was team, hey, he shouldn't have lost for the 12-6 elbow to the head. And now I'm like, I just can't kind of board this dude anymore in any possible way.
I appreciate greatness. I want to see that happen as long as it possibly can, because there's nobody on the planet that's ever done it better.
And he's selling a fight. He's selling his next big fight. So hopefully they actually pay him the money and he does it.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know where that's going to go. I mean, he's doing it correctly. He should absolutely be treating Tom Aspinall like he doesn't exist. I completely agree with that. That's the way to do it. Make the public make him more popular, because he's not as popular as Alex Pereira. It's not even close. And, you know, that's a harder fight to a guy that at this moment doesn't have the name value that John Jones would want to acquire. We could look at that 3 years down the line and it becomes a different thing. But right now, he just doesn't have it. So I get it. If I'm John, I want them to back that Brinks truck up as well.
Well, it's also because he might lose. I think like you wanted to get paid because the guy, you know, if you fight a guy with no name and you get knocked out, it's kind of a lose-lose. Get paid 15 mil and you get knocked out. Well, you know, a little more palatable.
Yeah, like the idea that he is like afraid of Tom Aspinall, which is like the public discourse among dummies, is insane. There's never been a person on the planet that John Jones has thought that could stop him from doing what he wants to do. That's just not a thing. You don't become the person that you are like that. I mean, I bet like Jordan thinks that he could beat like LeBron in a one-on-one game right now. I mean, you have to be some sort of psychopath in your own head to believe in yourself, to put yourself in those situations. So like, he recognizes the situation. He's got a boatload of leverage, and he's going to use it to either not have to get more, or like to never fight again, or just get a bag. He's playing it perfect. Perfect.
Yeah, I just want to like him more, but I get it. It's fine. But basketball, we got a lot of guys to like in basketball, so I'll
You
focus
got to
on.
just evaluate him based on his merits in the cage, man. I don't look at R. Kelly and P. Diddy and think about, like, when I listen to their music, it's their music. I can disregard the fact that they were horrible people.
See, I don't listen to their music. That's the difference between us, I guess. Like, I don't listen to it anymore because I'm like, I can't. I don't think I can do this. I don't think it's allowed.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a question, and I know what the answer is going to be. You're going to laugh before you could even respond. Let's say Billie Jean comes on the radio. Are you singing along? Or are you turning it off out of principle?
Not out of, but I wouldn't go to my way to listen to it. I'm probably not singing with it, but like
no one cares about Michael Jackson. That music comes on, and that is the most popular shit people are going to listen to.
It's a slippery slope with entertainment in general. I'll agree with that as a concept. Everybody's a piece of shit. You kind of unravel the threads there.
I'm going to watch old Chris Benoit matches. I'm going to watch, Roman Polanski movies. They're all horrible people. I don't want to be friends with them. I wouldn't want them around my family. But their medium, it's a different thing.
True. Pro wrestling. Oof, that's one of my favorite things. And boy,
yeah,
top down. That one's so good.
It's going to take you a while to find people that are actually good human beings, especially in the past. Very different culture in wrestling now, but choose any 1987 wrestler, and you're going to find somebody that was probably a bad dude.
Mm-hmm. When in doubt.
All righty. Rinpack, that's a great point. We're going to do you play Kevin Porter Jr., or is he a straight zero every time you open this up?
Oh, that's...
You ever rostering Miles Bridges?
I mean, the thing is, for gambling, I think you have to throw out any sort of conscience about it, because that's where it gets even more slippery, because money's on the line. For personal enjoyment of stuff, I maybe have a little bit of a fine-tooth comb slightly more.
Well, let's talk about this slate instead of all of the horrible people that exist that have made incredible art. The Chicago Bulls are 4.5-point dogs in Detroit, 234 total. Huge total here. I have this as the fastest pace matchup. It's also the highest, or tied for the highest total that I have in my sheet. We're seeing some ownership on the Chicago side. Zach LaVine continues to be relatively popular on every slate that he's on. He's 18% on DraftKings, 9 on FanDuel. And then it's kind of the same for everybody. It's like 10 for White, 10 for Vooch, 10 for Patrick Williams, 10 for Josh Giddey. A lot lower on the FanDuel side. Do you have anything that's standing out to you for Chicago?
I think LaVine is still the best play here. Like, he's kind of, Josh and I talk a lot in these early parts here about a lot of teams basically have players splitting 25% usage. They're all top 5 guys, nobody capping above 25. Here, LaVine's starting to pull away a little bit. He's at 24.1% usage, creeping past Vooch, who's at 21.5. Kobe White's 23.5. Giddey 21.7. It sounds stupid to kind of nickel and dime like this low percentage point in this point of the year, but LaVine pulling ahead of the pack at all, I think, screams to me what we would think about him is that he's the alpha scorer here. So I don't mind the 17.7% ownership projected to go his way. I've got him at 13% today. I mean, he's been at 1.05 fantasy points per minute on the year. I have him for that tonight. I think he looks good. Everything else here, I feel like if you adapt for what the 2024 environment is for the team, besides the matchup here looking pretty good, looking like it has a high pace and all that, like Vooch is just not the same guy he's been in the past in terms of his own usage, rebound rate, assist rate. Same thing for Kobe White. Josh Giddey is doing more, but he doesn't shoot enough where he wants you to. You're really going to get where you need to go with him. So I don't love anything here besides having 15% LaVine. I think that looks okay. Everybody else a little bit under the field on to very under the field on for Vooch's case.
Yeah, I think LaVine is very clearly the first guy you want to click on from a DraftKings perspective. And then if any one of those other guys, White, Vooch, Patrick Williams, or Giddey, end up in a lineup, I'm not surprised by it. But I don't see any sort of bulk ownership coming to Chicago here for me other than LaVine.
No.
It's just really murky. Everybody's sort of just priced where they should be. I mean, this is another team where they really haven't had anything weird happening. Like this rotation is just sort of the same rotation every day. It hasn't really moved around. And when your prices start to stabilize, it becomes really difficult to get to these guys in any sort of big way. The Detroit side, though, quite different. 30% ownership coming into Cade, 25 to 30 for Jaden Ivey, 25 for Tobias Harris, a little over 10 for Jalen Duren. Now, those numbers are all pretty extreme on the FanDuel side. They're just like a half beat lower. 20 for Cade, 20 for Ivy, 15 for Harris. We're getting a lot of ownership coming into Detroit. I think it makes a ton of sense. Big time pace, terrible Bulls defense. These guys that are regularly playing north of 30 minutes for the Pistons all look really good to me.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you. They all look really good. The issue I kind of have is that if if you were to play multiples of guys from this game, in particular on the Detroit side, you might lose some flexibility that you could potentially need for the 7:30 games, the Bulls game today, the only 7 o'clock game. So you need to know Miles Turner's questionable status. If we didn't know that by the time live before lock ends next show, I think that's one thing where I'd be reluctant to play as many Pistons because I want to have that flexibility to get whatever's going to be available from Indiana, whether it be Turner himself or the guys filling in for him. So that's the main thing I have concern point wise, but I'm actually half the field on all the players for Detroit, not deliberately. The only guy I got more than the field on was Jalen Duren. I just have these guys a little bit more lowly projected than Stokastic does. And as a result, that's kind of the difference between getting these guys 20% versus upwards of 40% or 35% for Cade Cunningham. Think they're good plays, but I don't want to lose my flexibility on the slate. And I think that's kind of the main thing I feel about with Detroit.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Cade would be the guy I would want the most. It tends to be the situation for me pretty much every slate. I've been getting him a lot. Now it seems like the field is joining me. So maybe I don't end up there as much as I thought, but he did have the highest optimal rate coming out of my sim before we got started. Actually, fourth overall on the slate. So I anticipate having in and around that 30% for him. Wouldn't be surprised at all if I'm a little lighter on Tobias Harris just because he's power forward only, just a little bit less flexibility. Yeah, the problem for me though is this game locking at 7 o'clock is going to end up with a decent chunk of exposure being set in stone. I don't think we're going to have a ton of like weird late swaps as much as we've had lately, but we do have some that are pending that we'll have to pay attention to. I liked Duren a lot more earlier today than I do right now. His ownership wasn't coming up really in our first run, and I was like, oh, cool. I think he looks like a pretty interesting GPP option. Now that he's getting around 13, I think he's properly owned. I think these Detroit guys are all largely properly owned. The MPE really helps for Jaden Ivey. Tobias Harris is playing enough minutes in a good matchup that I'm not surprised that he's getting that sort of ownership. I wouldn't be. I'm sort of expecting to be lighter on most of these guys. Cade, it would be the exception, especially because, and I talked about this on the strategy show this morning. So many of the pay up options on this slate just don't exist. We have Giannis, but there's no Jokic, there's no Wemby, there's no Embiid, there's no Luka, there's no AD, there's no Shea, and then the next highest guy that I have in terms of like raw talent is Şengün. So we have a chasm between Giannis and like the next guy that can be really, really awesome. And I think that makes me a little bit more interested in Cade just because of the way the slate looks.
I think that's reasonable. I think the issue with Cade, I mean, does not stop me from playing him because just sim-wise, I didn't get him quite as much. But I do think one guy who's going to go completely unknown and is like very live as a pivot to a chalky Cade is Booker in the late game.
Yeah.
The fact that there's nobody left for Phoenix if they're going to stay in that game, they're a 5-point dog, I think, at home against Orlando, so it doesn't look great for him. If they're going to hang in there, it's going to be Booker putting up probably 30 shots and being probably inefficient, but doing enough to keep in there. So I think with Cade, like there's ways I'd like to spend my money that aren't Cade. Towns, I also have a lot of too, and I think that kind of might have a push-pull dynamic as well. I think there are ways to get away from Cade, and I get why people like him a lot today, but a third of the field feels like a lot for the guy in the first game where the price is kind of caught up to how he's playing as well.
Sure. The Philadelphia 76ers are 5.5-point dogs in Miami, 211 total. This is the lowest total on today's slate. We got the news for Philly. Joel Embiid not going to be playing in this one. He has an illness. I'm guessing he's sick of the Philly media. That would be my guess. We are getting some ownership coming into Philly, though, but it's only happening in one spot, at least on DraftKings. It's happening on 2 on FanDuel because of a giant clerical error. Jared McCain, 54% owned on DraftKings at 5,800, 40% owned on FanDuel at 6,100. He is my number one contender on DraftKings. He is in the top 10 on FanDuel. Let's just get him out of the way quickly. He's one of the best plays that you can get to today. I don't see any reason why I wouldn't want to have a ton of him.
Yeah, I think he's borderline a lock button for me across 150 lineups I did before the show. And this is my projection, be a little bit higher than Stokastic, where I have him at 40.4. As Josh, last time we did a show, I was high on McCain. I'm going to keep being high on McCain, and I feel pretty good about it. But that ended up being right. Doesn't mean it's going to be right today. But I think McCain, to me, is a little bit undervalued right now. His usage, and it's a little bit smaller sample size when Embiid and Maxey are off the court this year. With those guys off the court, 32% usage, 22% assist rate, 1.2 fantasy points per minute on the year, just with everybody, whoever's playing for the most part. He's also been great there, 29% usage, 25% assist rate, 1.1 fantasy points per minute. I think he's still a smash play. It feels like the price is not catching up with him as much as his other players. And the fact that he's been this chalky and he's not 7K yet, I think you just jam him in, and wherever you get him, I think is honestly not enough if you don't get him in everything.
Yeah, no Maxi here, no Embiid here. There is an infinite amount of usage to go around, and that's what's going to keep him highly used. Like when Maxi comes back and when Embiid can be in a game, when they have everybody available, 28% usage for Jared McCain is not going to be the usage rate that he's going to continue to have. It's going to be sub 20 by the time that happens, and that will really change the scope of him. We'll probably go like 2 weeks. If everybody comes back for a bit, we'll probably go a couple weeks before we could even get to McCain before that price comes back down to the limited usage that he will inevitably get to. We also have to talk here about Paul George. Now he's 8% owned on DraftKings at 8,300. There's not much to write home about. But for some reason, FanDuel has him priced $1,000 cheaper than that, and he is 40% owned, more than Jared McCain is on FanDuel. And I get it. I mean, that price tag with no Embiid and no Maxi around, like Paul George should not be 7,300 on any slate in that scenario. So I get why he's getting the ownership. He looks fantastic on FanDuel.
Yeah, he looked like a good play if you assumed Embiid was in this morning, and now with Embiid out, he does look, not as much better as I would have thought, but still looks like a strong play on the day. The price tag on FanDuel, like Josh mentioned, I heard him mention it on his strategy show this morning. I was like, that doesn't make sense, and I was like, yeah, all right, I guess I could see that that's happening, and he feels like it should be higher owned than 40%, to be honest. I think it's an interesting play on DraftKings, though, under 10% owned. I think kind of like Booker, like it's a really good opportunity for him. In particular, if Paul George were to hit and have a ceiling effort game here, which maybe you need against Miami, he probably pulls from McCain a little bit. So I think if you're not going to play McCain, I would try to give a boost to George. I would consider him a little bit more. I think playing him alongside McCain is also certainly an option, but it's under 10% on DraftKings is crazy. His chalk ownership on FanDuel makes total sense. Projection's not great for DraftKings, but like he can win the slate at under 10% ownership.
Arcathelza, I can confidently say that Jared McCain's minutes are guaranteed for Philly right now. Who are they playing ahead of him in a closing lineup? They don't have anybody else that does what he does. They're not trying to get Eric Gordon and Jeff Doughton and no, he's with no Maxi and no Embiid. Jared McCain's playing the entire game.
He's also really good.
Caleb could close. What conversation are we having here? Caleb Martin is averaging more minutes played for the Sixers than any other person on the team. Of course he can close.
Yeah, I mean, like closing is one thing, but like just ignoring the performance, like they're not going to take minutes away from him because he's crushing and he's like probably one of the best outcomes they've had since drafting Maxi. Like so,
yeah,
he's basically fractional Maxi right now. So just play fractional Maxi at too cheap of a price tag.
If Caleb Martin doesn't close this game, it's because one of these two teams got beat by 100. Who's going to close if Caleb Martin might not close and McCain might not close? Allen Iverson, Aaron McKee, Todd McCullough. What are we doing here? Fascinating.
Eric Snow. There we go.
There we go. I like it. I like it. The Miami side. So this team has been just a random player generator of guys that can be available today. I missed by like 4 different dudes by the time the injury report came out. So Jimmy Butler is back. Jaime Jaquez is out. Terry Rozier is out. All the other people that are normally available are available. We're seeing 20% ownership come to Duncan Robinson. We're seeing 20% ownership coming into Nikola Jovic. And everybody else on Miami is single digits or basically unowned. Mostly the same story on FanDuel, just no extremes. 10% to Duncan Robinson. Everybody else in single digits. This Miami team is weird. I like Bam and Hero a lot more than I like Duncan Robinson and Nikola Jovic.
Yeah, I'm getting Duncan Robinson a lot in the sim. I certainly don't like him, but I got 29% exposure. Feels going to be at 22%. The price tag works. The one position at shooting guard on DraftKings doesn't help out that much. So I'm actually surprised I got him as much as I did, but I get why people are going to be there. He's under 4K. Same thing for Jovic. I'm higher on Duncan than Jovic for whatever that matters, but it's not a personal choice stand. It's just the projection I think slightly favors Duncan Robinson for me by about 2.1 points. Besides that, I'm with you on Bam and Hero. I think those guys are strong plays. I have Hero 2x the field. He's going to be about 3.5% owned, so it's not a big stand, but it's still one where if Hero goes off, I'd like to have more than the field if possible, especially after he did kind of bust his chalk the last week. Adebayo, see upside for him a little bit less with Jimmy Butler in. Obviously, when Tyler Hero failed the last time that I did content around this, Hero was a big one who kind of lost out on that. Bam dominated the ball more, had the 60-point day fantasy-wise. I don't think that happens again here today, but certainly it's in the range of outcomes. So Bam, 9% field exposure. I'm right with that. Butler got none of, though. I feel like his price is not right now with how his rates have been on the year. He's going the wrong way in terms of every stat, I feel like, which maybe is deliberate, but He's just not Tyler Hero right now. It's just kind of odd to say.
Tyler Hero season at 8K. Is that what today is about to be? That's going to be absolute craziness. Truly. By the way, just for reference sake here, prior to the Orlando game, which also contained Paul George, or also contained Joel Embiid, a game in which McCain played 31 minutes and a giant chunk of the beginning of the fourth quarter, played the entire fourth quarter against Cleveland, New York, and Charlotte, closed against the Lakers, and played the entire fourth quarter and just the fourth quarter in that Clippers blowout. He's just a part of the team now in a massive, massive way.
Yeah, and he looks great. And again,
Yeah.
I think you could talk into reasons to fade anybody always, especially if you're trying to play, the high dollar lottery style tournaments. But just, I think, don't overthink this one personally, but I got it.
Yeah. If Embiid were in, I could have that conversation. Because then, if the shot's not falling, he's a giant zero on defense. I could see it. With no Embiid and no Maxey, that dude is locked in. They don't have offense anywhere else. So we all know what's about to happen here. Chat, you're well aware of it. S&P already said it. McCain's going to play 22 minutes, and we're not going to understand why.
I'd be sad. I'd be very sad, I'll say. So I'm dying on the ship with McCain. So that's all I could say to everybody else.
Yeah. All right. Schedule for the rest of the day. Very simple. Hit that like button first. Second is easy. It's going to be live before lock coming up at 6 o'clock. They'll take you all the way up until 7. You get Greg and Eric. And then at 7:15, we've got Monday Night Football tonight. Let's hope Rico Dowdle doesn't catch any passes. That's going to be a big one for me and Jordan. And anybody that placed it on NFL Live Before Lock yesterday at 9 o'clock in the morning. But you'll get NFL Live Before Lock from 7:15 to 8:15. That's going to be Laffy and Matt Gajewski breaking it all down for you guys. So plenty of more shows. We've got, 2.5 hours more of live content tonight? Crushing it over here. Oh, brother, here we go. So the Washington Wizards are 2-touchdown dogs in New York. It's a 233 total. So the Knicks are without Miles McBride. Once again, this is going to look a lot like it did yesterday. The Washington side, they do have a Q tag on Bilal Coulibaly. We also got Malcolm Brogdon back yesterday. I assumed he wouldn't play today, but he's here with a $6,200 price tag on DraftKings, as if he's being priced from a different year. 6% ownership to Kuzma on DraftKings, 3% on FanDuel. Those are the two highest marks for ownership for Washington on either site. These guys are GPP specific only. I can't imagine having a priority from the Wizards. I get the idea if you want to get a couple of these guys, but it's going to be low volume.
Yeah, I got 3% Kyle Kuzma. That's as much as I could get to here. The issue, is these guys' prices were kind of stabilizing a little bit they were higher because Kuzma was out. Kuzma comes back in. They're all too high for everybody. Starts to come back down. Then you went in Brogdon. And Brogdon, for what it's worth right now, is barely touching the ball when he's been out there. He's played 22 minutes per game so far. I think it might have only been one game, right? But at 11% usage, no assists, just didn't do anything while he was out there as an observer. But you expect him to get back to close to what his historical rates have been, where he's been about fantasy point per minute guy. Him being in there, totally unplayable, but it does suck away the projection a little bit from everybody else. And just adds another body into the rotation who's legit NBA guys, as Josh talked about this morning as well. So really nothing here looks good. J-Val is a no ownership tournament play. I think always kind of an option, but Coulibaly coming out maybe opens up a little bit more on the wing, but even that I don't think would actually make anybody really playable.
The Knicks side, on the other hand, is a huge, huge problem. There's 10% ownership coming into Mikal Bridges. He might be my favorite play of the day at this point. There's 9 coming into Josh Hart, so he's probably my second favorite play on the slate. 20 to Anunoby on DraftKings, 10 to Brunson, 40 to Towns. I want everything here. These guys are going to play infinite minutes. Even in a ridiculous blowout, it's clearly going well for the Knicks. In a blowout, these Bridges and Hart are probably still playing 36 minutes. They had the most preposterous rotations possible yesterday, just in case anybody wasn't paying attention to the Knicks game. Mikal Bridges checked in with 1:43 left in the first quarter. He never left the floor again. He played 45 minutes. Josh Hart came back in with 43 seconds left in the first quarter. He never left the floor again, played 46 minutes. This is the same rotation they had yesterday. I fully expect comparable playing time. I've got 41 for Bridges, 40 for Hart. I still only have 38 for Anunoby, and I'm probably going to go to 39 or 40. I want these guys in abundance. They're going to wreck Washington. They're going to play a ton. I don't know why the field isn't getting them more.
Yeah, I like all the guys. I still am team Towns. I'm actually curious your thoughts on Towns the most here because I think people still, I was doing my stream on the Splash Play NBA channel before this one. Somebody's like, can't imagine playing Towns at 40% ownership. And it's like on this slate where you don't have really pivot points, you don't have your Wembys, don't have your Jokic's, don't have the high dollar guys to go to. Towns has been a monster putting up 1.46 fantasy points per minute so far this year. Like, I don't think you fade Towns. But I'm with you and everybody else too. Like, if you're going to not play Towns, then you should also be loading up on Hart. You should also be loading up on Brunson more than he's going to be owned. There's like a lot of potential for something in this game to break the slate, and the field's going to assume it's Towns, and I'm okay with that. Anunoby too going to be pretty chalky, but I've got more than the field on Towns. I've got 62% going his way. With the field and everybody else, a little bit higher on Josh Hart. I like the Knicks. I mean, the spot against Washington, and like Josh mentioned, this is the most predictable team rotation wise because they just drive their dudes into the ground, and and without McBride especially, like there's no other play they can go to on the team really.
No. So I like Towns a lot. I think he grades out really well. He's the only guy that would scare me from the Knicks. He's the only guy that they like don't have to play 40 minutes, which is nerve-wracking a little bit. He played 30 yesterday, never came back in. They closed with Sims. Still looks good. I know I'm going to have a bunch of him. I don't know if I get up to that like 40% that the field's at. But I'm just fascinated by the fact that Bridges and Hart are 10%. It's even more interesting to me that Anunoby is 22. I can't wrap my head around why one would be 10 more than the other. Like, if it is very likely that Mikal Bridges plays 44 or more minutes today. It is likely that Josh Hart plays, 43 minutes plus today. I want to just soak up as many of those. Like, it's a 6-game slate. Those minutes carry a lot more weight than they do when this is a 10-gamer. Bridges averaging 43 minutes a game his last 3, 41.2 his last 5. He's averaging 40 in his last 10, and he's at 39 for the year. Josh Hart, 40 in his last 3, 40 in his last 5, 39 in the last 10. These guys are just going to be out there with no McBride. I'm going to be miles over the field on Bridges and Hart.
Yeah, I mean, Hart, I'm definitely more comfortable getting above the field on. Bridges, I am lower on. I think the projection doesn't look as good if you use his current rates, where he's probably deferring the most out of everybody on the team in terms of the fantasy stat padding, 0.77 fantasy points per minute. But I'm with you. Like, the potential for 40 minutes is there. Washington, for whatever their flaws may be, which are plentiful, they do have a knack for staying in games more than it feels like they should in most situations. So that's obviously more anecdotal than anything in the game with this kind of high of a spread, 14.5-point spread. But still one where I think they can lose late and they can hang in for 3/4 and it wouldn't shock me. I'm still crazy about Towns though. Like, he's been such a great producer. Yesterday got hurt and then didn't get back on the court, as Josh mentioned, which they said it was defensive stuff, but he took like a pretty bad fall, and like you kind of make the case either way. But even that, like again, like Josh mentioned, he played 30 minutes before that. So I'm cool with Towns. I think he's good chalk. Anunoby, I'm with you. Like, I'm coming a little bit under that. Maybe spread some more Josh Hart's way in particular, but I support you on Bridges as well. Something in this game makes a winning lineup tonight. I think I'd feel pretty confident about.
Yeah, it would be a real weird game script for one of these Knicks guys to not just be in the winning lineup. We would look back and be like, oh my God, the Wizards covered their own spread. They won by 14 or something.
Yeah, they took them all out in the third quarter for once and let Matt Ryan get up some shots.
Ooh. So I think the moral of the story is whichever one of the Knicks starters' names you click on, you're going to feel pretty good about it. Like, they're all getting big minutes. They should carve up Washington. They all look like good plays. Which one you want to prioritize? I'm happy to hear any answer. I wouldn't fight anybody for any one of those. Pacers and Raptors. So Pacers are 3.5-point favorites in Toronto, 234 total. Pacers are kind of walking wounded at this point now too. This is they're starting to get a little gross. We've got, obviously, none of the backup centers exist. Andrew Nembhard out, Aaron Nesmith out. We also got Ben Shepherd out, and Miles Turner is questionable with calf soreness. Now, if Miles Turner gets ruled out, oh baby, does Indiana look insane, because they are fresh out of dudes that can play center. We're seeing a ton of ownership now coming into Indy. Call it 15 for Halliburton on both. Call it Siakam for 15. Call it Mathurin for 15 on both. Turner's 18 on both sites. Jarris Walker is 30 on DraftKings and 20 on FanDuel. TJ McConnell is 35 on DraftKings and 20 on FanDuel. These guys are all pulling a ton of it. I don't think any of these guys really separate from each other other than just different salary tiers. Do you have any like preferences for Indy?
I have a pretty big stand on Jarris Walker. I got him at 75% of my sim lineups, but my projection is higher than Stokastic. I'm at 29.1 today. They have him at 25.4. So I do like to let my projections kind of allow me to differentiate a little bit because that's the one thing I have going for myself. So I feel about it. So I will be going high on Jarris Walker. He would be a snash play if Miles Turner were out as well. And actually, this might be more of a Josh question. I presume he'd be the big beneficiary there. Like Siakam gets more center run, going to be more productive. But Jarris Walker, I think, looks like a good play now, absorbing some of those Ben Shepherd minutes. I guess my question would be for you, Josh, like Shepherd being out, like, do we really think Jarris Walker's going to get 27.9 just because of that? Because that feels like a little bit of a fragile minutes projection if Turner is in, based on what I'm seeing right now.
I gave him 28 minutes.
Okay.
I'm assuming he starts right now with Turner in. That minutes number will go up if Turner ends up out. But yeah, I went 28. I don't think that he has to be a part of the closing lineup necessarily. They could, hot swap people out for offense, defense type stuff. You want to get McConnell out there for a couple extra minutes at the end. I think that's possible too. But even at 28, he just looks like a really nice value. Not the best per minute guy. I got him around like 0.87, but small forward, power forward, 4,300, and they just don't have enough bodies to not use him. I like Walker quite a bit. I like Walker more than I like McConnell right now.
It's weird with Walker too, because they'll play him at the 3, the 4, and the 5 a little bit. So that's sort of where I'm not sure where his minutes necessarily come from in a lineup. He's kind of like, he reminds me of O'Shea Brissett, kind of like how the Pacers would use him, where he'll shoot some threes, a little bit more active, he'll chase some shots down. But I think he's got a bunch of outs. If Turner's out, like I think he benefits the most. Probably Obi Toppin probably gets some more minutes too. But I like Walker as it is, and if Turner's out, I think he'd be like even more of a lock play for me.
Yeah, if Turner happens to be out, like obviously Obi Toppin's probably playing 30 minutes and he becomes an insane value on DraftKings. I don't know if they go to I don't know if this gets James Johnson in for some minutes. They've got Enrique Freeman, who's not short, is really the only way I could describe it. But I think you're going to be, if we lose Turner, we're going to be paying very close attention to Jarris Walker and Obi Toppin. Toronto. Weird team. Crazy ownership on FanDuel. 40 to Barrett, 25 to Pirtle, around 15 for Agbaji, Dick, and Mitchell. It's a lot lighter on DraftKings. These guys are all like massively priced higher on the DraftKings sides, but still 20% ownership to Pirtle, close to 20 on Barrett, and around 10 for Boucher. I assume you're going to have a boatload of Davion Mitchell, but what else are you getting to from Toronto?
The Davion Mitchell era has ended for me, thankfully, and the numbers have stabilized, and his minutes have also come down enough that still projected for 30.3 today. But no, Davion Mitchell and Barrett's back in, not for me. Barrett looks good. I think Barrett, I've got 21% in the 150 set I built before the stream. He and Pirtle, to me, just plays I'm getting every night when Quickly and Barnes have been out. Feel good about that. FanDuel, the price tags, I know even softer for Barrett, would have him a good amount there as well. I feel like he and Paul George would be two of the priority plays for me on some of those positions. So I like Barrett, like Pirtle. On this slate, think if I'm not getting Towns, I'm probably getting Pirtle on these lineups, and I'm sure I'm getting both of them together a good amount. But Pirtle to me would be about 1/3 of the lineups, and
Yeah.
got Chris Boucher a lot today too, which I think is just because that price tag works at 4,400. But I think where I wasn't getting Jarris Walker, I'm getting Boucher, and he projects decently for me, so I could see why. I got him for 25 fantasy points today, which is a little bit higher than Stokastic does.
And that's a little bit higher than me too. He doesn't strike me as somebody that I'll end up getting much of. I would probably end up getting more of like somebody shitty like Agbaji at no ownership. Or, I mean, I'm a little surprised to see Grady Dick only be at 5% given shooting guard small forward eligibility. Mid-tier build really works there. I mean, his usage has been fantastic with no Quickly around and no Scotty Barnes around. So I kind of like the low-owned dudes here, the Mitchell, Agbaji, Dick. They intrigue me a little bit more. I think the Barrett and Pirtle ownership is spot on. I don't have any problems with it, but I think some of these guys are getting a little slept on, especially because there's going to be no defensive ability coming from the Indiana Pacers, especially if Turner ends up out.
Yeah, and I think theoretically a little bit of a pace up though. Pacers have kind of come down from where they were last year, where they were just cruising.
All right. Anything else for the Raptors?
No, I got a little bit of Mogbo and Grady Dick. I got 3%, so or close to 4%, so not too far off the field there. But yeah, to me, Barrett and Pirtle, and to a lesser extent Boucher are the stands here.
All righty, folks. I mentioned that this show is brought to you by us, and this is why. There's a link in the description. Jordan will drop it into chat If you click that link, you can get a month of the Stokastic Sims, which for whatever sport you want, and it'll be totally free on our end. And it's really not going to cost you anything other than a deposit to one of our partners, either on the Pick'em side or the Sportsbook side. You'll see the list here. You sign up there, you follow the instructions at the link that you click on. There's 4 steps. You make your deposit at whatever site it is. You got to take a screenshot, email it to us. And then we're going to get you hooked up with a month of our Sims. That's projections and ownership, all of the tools that we have to generate lineups and simulate those lineups. Everything's included. This is the perfect way for you guys to get in and not have to have any sort of cost. So if you're in a legal sports betting state or a legal pick'em state and you haven't signed up at one of those sites yet, this is the easiest way to get in at Stokastic because it won't cost you anything for a month. So take advantage. Click that link. All right. Houston Rockets, 2.5-point dogs in Milwaukee, 224 total. Just flat or uninteresting ownership to everybody. Van Vliet just over 10. Amen Thompson just over 10. Everything else single digits. I don't know how you pick an individual from Houston today, but they look okay.
Yeah, I like Şengün the most here. Projected for under 7% ownership. I got him just shy of 20. He's been about 1.45 fantasy points per minute so far in the year. I'd have him closer to 1.5 flat today. Spot against Milwaukee has been one historically like a little bit worried about, but I think for him, kind of player can create value, can get the ball to open shooters against Milwaukee's defense, which is not the defense of the last few years, especially with Lillard back in. So I like Şengün in the spot. Think he's a viable play, even though you have the usual concerns about him maybe not closing a game that kind of loom large. Didn't really get anything else here. Got 9% Amen Thompson, 6% Jalen Green. I'm low on Van Vliet. Van Vliet's just been not the same Van Vliet this year, even though he does have these games that seem to align better. But 0.95 fantasy points per minute per game on the year. Not really doing a whole lot for me projection-wise. So it's kind of Şengün or bust for me, and I don't mind Amen Thompson on either side, I guess. FanDuel price tag's got kind of stupid for Amen Thompson.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty tough to pay 6,200 for him. I don't see it. I'm expecting like random Houston guys to just be in a bunch of stuff, like a random Jalen Green, a random Alperen Şengün, a random Fred VanVleet. But I don't look at anybody on Houston and think like that is the guy for sure. They're too deep. They're too malleable. Anybody can be in basically any role at any time with any lineup for these guys. And that makes it really, really difficult. Their closing lineup is a grab bag every day. This is a team that you really don't know the closing lineup for. Other than Fred VanVleet's never going anywhere, I would imagine. I just don't want much from Houston. And it's worse on the opposite side. 7% ownership to Giannis on DraftKings. Next highest guy on DK is 2. 9% ownership on FanDuel to Giannis. Next closest guy is 4. That's Dame, who's only 8,400, which I think looks really interesting in a GPP. Giannis is 12K today. There's no one in his universe. What do you do with him?
I'm going to give him 2x the field, which I'm okay with. I don't want to go crazy on it. Somebody was asking me before, and like, what would you do in the spot here? Giannis, nobody's going to play him. Like, why is somebody playing Giannis is really the big question. It's because like there's just nobody in that price tag, and his projection itself, it's like a little bit more than 5x, but it's not going crazy. So you don't have to go out of your way to get there when you have a bunch of guys in the 7 to 10K range that all have pretty good projections as well. Some of them upwards of 50. So you're not really that far off of Giannis. But I think on this kind of spot, like it's pure tournamentness of Giannis at 12K. Like I think there's something to that. So being with the field, getting above it in a 150 set or even into 20 max, I'd feel pretty good about. So that's what I'm going to do today, but it's not really one of those things where like, I think Giannis is a great play. He's now priced. You're paying the price tag for him going nuts without Lillard. Now Lillard's back in, even with him kind of ramping up from the concussion protocol. It's not like he's going to take a lot of possessions away. So Giannis is not really the play. He should be at 12K, but you're paying for that 50-point game and him just soaking up all the usage while Lillard was out.
I feel like I want to get a lot of Giannis on a situation like today, because if he just has a standard issue like above average Giannis day, it's so hard for any other individual player on this slate to get into his same universe. And I think Dame being back is actually helpful. They have so little talent that having another person out there to occupy space and awareness is a good thing. If Damian Lillard is DeLon Wright on every day, you can pay a lot more attention to someone like Giannis. I don't expect to get a lot of him. It depends how all the value breaks. Like if the indie news changes and all of a sudden we've got a cheap ass Obi Toppin on top of all of this stuff, the more value we start to get, the more we're going to see that Giannis ownership creep up. But I'm very intrigued by him as a sub 10% owned guy on a 6-game slate when there are no pay up comps. None of his normal pay up competitors exist on this slate, and it feels like I should have him. I just don't know if it's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, there's just nobody close in price, so people are going to automatically, completely roll out that side of the salary thing, and that's where Giannis, I think, has some merit. So, and I think there's enough value to get there with Giannis now. It's like a little bit more uncomfortable than it would be if, unless there were some guys in Indiana out, like Josh mentioned. But there's enough value to make it work, I think. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not a runaway projection play, but I think for a tournament when you have Giannis at 5-ish%, might as well just go a little bit over on that.
All told, this is probably the worst game that you can get to in terms of like identifying somebody you want a bunch of. It just doesn't seem to exist on Houston or Milwaukee.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
The Orlando Magic, 4.5-point favorites in Phoenix, 212 total, second lowest total of the 8 games. I have it as the lowest pace game as well. So not a lot of features going well here. And obviously, Orlando's defense is absolutely incredible. It's no matter who's on the court, they're basically just a defense that you want no part of if you're an offense. Now, for Orlando, we have a doubtful Wendell Carter Jr., so he should be working his way back soon. Pour one out for Goga. Nope, still no Paolo. So this is just the standard Orlando team. We've been watching Franz Wagner go bonkers over the last 2 weeks. He's like 15% owned on DraftKings. Suggs, KCP, Goga, all around 10. John Isaac is at 17. That one scares me. And then these guys have better pricing on FanDuel. So Franz is $300 cheaper. He's 25% owned. Suggs is $300 cheaper. He's 30% owned. John Isaac is also 20 on FanDuel. Let's start with the Franz piece. Are you getting there, or is 9,100 a little difficult?
I'm right there with the field on it. I got 16% compared to the field's 14, so that feels about right to me. I mean, he's been crushing. Like, he really has been a better player with Banchero out. I'm obviously having Wendell Carter doesn't hurt either for grabbing a few more rebounds, even though Batatse probably a net break even on that. Franz, I don't want to be out on him because like he keeps killing me on every slate because I'm not getting there as much. And now the projections are lining well enough where I'm like, okay, I can get here and I feel okay about it. But the price tags come up, price sensitivity in NBA DFS, one of the most important things to keep in mind. So if you want to just kind of maybe move away from him for that reason alone, I wouldn't judge you for it. But small forward, power forward, 9,100 in a slate where there aren't great, 10K options to get to, I think he works well enough. So being a little bit above the field there looks good. And and I think Franz, honestly, just an impressive player. Like, he's grown before our eyes. He's just not going to be this guy when Banchero comes back, which kind of sucks.
Hopefully he is. Because they still need him to do everything that he's doing with no Banchero around. It's not like they have other offensive talent. They've got plenty of room to let 2 people cook. So I'm anxious to see how that reintegration happens and if Franz can keep this up. I'm a huge Franz Wagner guy, though, so
Well, he's
we
just too
shall
differential in like normal situations. I feel like is his concern point, which now is like he has nobody to defer to, and that's why he's kind of hitting the apex.
Yeah, I'm hoping he stops being. I'm hoping he stops deferring, and let's just let KCP and Jalen Suggs do a little bit less.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just all these guys just look so similar to me relative to salary. Like, I'll probably have a little KCP, I'll have a little Goga, I'll have a little Suggs, but I just don't. The one guy I'd be very surprised if I get too much John Isaac. I'm permanently nervous about that guy. Have the minutes been creeping up? Yeah, they have, and he's a great per minute dude. He's a fantasy point per minute guy at a relatively low price tag. But you need those minutes, and there's so many downside options for me for Isaac with a slate where we have a ton of value that I'm willing to like lose out on this one. If Durant were healthy, I might be a little bit more nervous that Isaac gets a couple extra minutes just from a like defensive matchup standpoint. But John Isaac doesn't really serve a big purpose against Phoenix today because like, what are you going to do? Put him on Ryan Dunn or Royce O'Neal? Like his skill set is less valuable in a situation where Phoenix doesn't have all of their wings available. So I'm nervous about Isaac.
I think that makes sense. Yeah, I'm lower on Isaac than Boucher and then Jarris Walker, and that's again with Turner in. So yeah, Isaac not really a play for me. I got him half the field. So I guess that's enough of a play, but still with them being chalky, I'm just not there.
Then on the Phoenix side, these guys continue to just have really terrible injury luck. Still no Bradley Beal, still no Kevin Durant. Nurkic out once again. So we're getting 19% ownership coming into Grayson Allen. Single digits to everybody else on Phoenix. Booker and Plumlee are just north of 10% on the FanDuel side. Booker is also a crisp $800 cheaper on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings. So it looks way different on FanDuel, but I like the idea of going to an essentially unowned Devin Booker, potentially in some late swaps as the day is going on. But, perfectly reasonable GPP play today. Somebody I would be happy to have like 10 to 15% of if he's really that low owned. I don't have much else from Phoenix that stands out.
Yeah, I would like to get some more Booker if I could. It just didn't occur naturally with the projection. He's far enough off a lot of these guys, honestly, including Franz. The same game, I would actually have Franz a little bit higher projected, which is not crazy given that Stokastic has the same thing. Booker, I do think tournament play wise, you see him being 2% owned. There's nobody else there. Who's going to get shots up here? It's going to be Booker first. He's going to maybe miss a lot against a tough defense. And Orlando's defense is one of the best in the league. Like I could initially format my sheet. Everything is bright red for Orlando's defense because of what they're doing on the year. But that said, like Booker is a guy who could beat any matchup. So if you're going to take the stab on him on DraftKings, I think he'll be low enough to take the shot. FanDuel does look like a much better play though, relative to the salary and all that. Besides that, Grayson Allen, I got 13% of, but that's less than the field's 19%. He just is not doing it for me overall salary wise, but shooting guard only under 4K. I could see trying to get there more, but the field's ownership feels about right. I think that's it. Like Iguodaro feels close to playable, but I didn't get him much. Got him 1% of my 150 set. Honestly, these guys all look okay to rotate in, but nobody's standing out more than 6% ish ownership.
Yeah, I wish Grayson Allen had the MPE. I'd be a little bit more intrigued there. I've got like a faint hint of kind of liking Tyus Jones in GPPs at relatively low ownership now that all these guys are out. Like the minutes are set. Wouldn't take a crazy score. You get to like 35 for Tyus Jones and you're probably feeling pretty good. And I think that could be, a fantasy point per minute across 34 minutes wouldn't be all that insane for a decent Tyus Jones game, other than the fact that this defensive matchup is just so rough. Their center rotation is gross.
I tried to juice Tyus Jones a little bit because I heard you talk about that on the strategy show, and like his rates are so bad this year that you kind of have to go to historical rates to get him where he needs to go. And like if he's Memphis Tyus Jones, if he's Washington Tyus Jones, he can be useful in the spot. He's just deferring so much right now that's a little bit tough. And for Booker, for even Okogie's pressing usage a little bit more this year. There are ways that he doesn't turn into old Tyus Jones, and that's my concern point.
Yeah.
But I got him like 2%. He's going to be 5% for the field, so I don't want to have nothing, I don't think.
I hear you. Yeah, I don't want to like advocate too hard for him. It's not like a stand I want to take or anything, but I just look at it and it's like, okay, there's no Beal, that's a lot. There's no Durant, that's a lot. There's no Nurkic, that's a lot. It's a lot of guys that like to get shots up. Not that Tyus Jones is going to become like a 25% usage guy, but he just has more opportunity in this situation than I think the ownership is giving him credit for. For a guy that is like definitely not coming off the floor in any situation if it's competitive.
He should also be used to create more offense for Phoenix. And at some point, I assume that's going to level out. It just hasn't been the case so far. And I think if you buy into historical Tyus Jones, like he's been a pretty good distributor, probably one of the better distributors in the league. They just don't use that skill set so far in Phoenix.
Well, the problem is he's distributing to Josh Okogie, Ryan Dunn, Royce O'Neal, Damian Lee, whatever center is on the court at the time. So I'm not surprised that the distribution isn't going as well with that illustrious offensive crop that I just mentioned.
Okogie's playing well, and I don't think he's unplayable today. I got him at 6.5%. I had him the other day too when whatever the last Phoenix slate was during the week, and he went nuts in that game. I don't think Okogie's good, for the record. And I agree he's not going to create a lot of assist opportunities. He's not a good shooter, but he's been producing well, rebounding well. Usage has been up, so I think Okogie quietly an interesting play.
I think he looks just like the Tyus Jones version of what I just said, just not the same sort of like locked in minutes. I mean, he's going to play a bunch by default here, but like, Tyus Jones is definitely set north of 30 and Okogie can get to that point, but I think they look pretty similar as like GPP options. I like that shout. Okogie's been a very different, 21% usage on the season is wild for him.
And again, crashing the boards too, rebound rate almost 14%, I guess 13.5%. So he's there with like a Royce O'Neal type, which is at least some evolution to his game.
All right, guys, we got about 10 minutes before we got to get out of here. 1,600 people in the door, 165 likes. That is poor. That is like a Mike Tyson boxing performance right now. Not getting it done. Hit that thumbs up, run it up a little bit higher. But doesn't cost you anything to hit the thumbs up, and it helps out a ton. Final two games of the slate. Not involved in the DraftKings main. And that's kind of interesting because Atlanta is a wild team now. Bogdan Bogdanovic out of nowhere, just not on the injury report any longer. Vit Krejci out for injury management. He made his return yesterday. So they're starting to get some guys back. DeAndre Hunter is in for this one as well. There's no ownership, though. coming into Atlanta on FanDuel. They might just have too many bodies with all of these increased prices from having people missing. 6% ownership to Onyeka Okongwu at 5,200, power forward center. Everybody else is either 1 or 0. So Atlanta?
Bogdan coming back in just ruins it, I think. It's just one of those situations we talk about a lot here that really the most important part of DFS in the NBA is like being aware of, hey, where are the prices moving? Prices have moved enough because Bogdan's been out. Trae Young's got more usage. Jalen Johnson's more usage and really assists. He's been kind of distributing the ball better too. All these guys have been a little bit better. Dyson Daniels, same thing to some extent as well. Though a lot of his fantasy production's been from the steal component. But like all these guys are kind of priced to not have one more decent usage player in, which Bogdan is. For as much minutes he's going to get, he does suck away the production enough that I can't imagine getting here for anything. And these guys looked okay to me on the DK late slate, but now having Bogdan back in for X amount of minutes is enough to make these guys all look unplayable at their current price tags for the most part. Maybe could still get to Okongwu, maybe could still get to Jalen Johnson, but we're outside the main value metrics there. I think Bogdan just kind of ruins everything for this team right now.
It's just gross. They're the exact opposite of Sacramento for today. Their opponents are slightly different because they're missing Malik Monk, they're missing DeMar DeRozan, they're missing Domantas Sabonis, and that is showing up in the ownership because De'Aaron Fox and Trey Lyles are both 60% owned, and Keegan Murray and Kevin Huerter are both 25% owned. I agree with most of that. You can make a case that Lyles is like a hair too high. I can make a case that De'Aaron Fox might be too low. He looks incredible and has been going insane. Probably not going to meet a ton of resistance from Atlanta. And like Murray and Huerter are just going to play such massive minutes that I get all those 4 dudes are crazy priorities on FanDuel.
Yeah, I mean, Murray looks like one of the best plays. Obviously, we've seen the results lately, so it's not sneaking up on anybody here, but you're losing basically, 2 25 to 30% usage rate guys plus Malik Monk. So, he's been closer to 20 this year, but like 3 really ball dominant guys now to the rotation. And as a result, you're getting De'Aaron Fox having 50, real life point upside all of a sudden. It's not that he always didn't have that upside. It's just that you're sharing the ball so much. But overall, I'd have him for 1.5 fantasy points per minute tonight. I think he's one of the best plays on the slate. If you're playing the DK late slate, he's underpriced on there as well. Keegan Murray looks okay to me. He's honestly hasn't been as great in some of these spots as I would like him to be. Feels like having less opportunity has been not good for his growth. I'm sort of always playing overall with all these guys in down to 0.74 fantasy points per minute. But without all the guys in, I'd still have him at 0.97 a day. So I think he looks good with you on Lyles maybe being a little bit overvalued. Herder, I'm okay with, but it's like Fox or nothing here. Like Fox, I think you have to play relative to the projection.
Yeah, it's crazy what happens when Domantas Sabonis, Malik Monk, and DeMar DeRozan aren't on the floor. Fox is just like, I'm just going to shoot all of the shots.
Which is what I would do if I were an NBA player, so I get it.
Yeah, I don't say that as if I think that he's doing the wrong thing, that's for sure. But yeah, look, it's those 4 guys and it's nobody else. Like there's nothing else coming into the rest of Sacramento. It's just 180% of ownership going into those 4 guys. And like, it makes complete sense to me. I mean, I have 36% usage in for De'Aaron Fox. I got him for 32.5 real points. That is a crazy projection.
I've got him at 34.8.
Yeah, it's all scoring and it should be fine here against Atlanta. Although he is about to get a steady helping of Dyson Daniels, which has been going quite well for Dyson Daniels. The Great Barrier Thief.
Which is a great nickname.
It is. It's so good. Final game. Got a couple minutes to talk through it. Golden State Warriors, 5-point favorites in LA, taking on the LA Clippers. Steph Curry, questionable. No Kevon Looney. Lindy Waters, questionable. And I'm anticipating him not playing. For the Clips, Mo Bamba, questionable. Finally got back. We don't know if he's going to be playing today. All the other guys that are normally out are out. 9% ownership to Andrew Wiggins to the Warriors. It's minimal single digits to everybody. The Curry news will obviously change everything for Golden State if that breaks the other direction. But right now, I can't imagine prioritizing anybody other than Curry, Green, and Wiggins. And I'm not saying that I am prioritizing them, but those are the only 3 names that I would want to click on.
Yeah, Curry and Wiggins for me would I think be the biggest priorities here. Trace Jackson Davis, I probably wouldn't play him on FanDuel at center, but DK late slate center, I think he looks okay. But Steph went through shoot around, so I would expect him to go today and not open up the crazy value. But he looks good. He's honestly been great on the year, 1.47 fantasy points per minute. Shooting at a really good clip, even by Steph Curry standards, 65% true shooting. So for Steph, I think he's the play here. If you're going to get away from Fox, I think going to Steph would be a logical enough thing to do. But frankly, relative to the projections of the salaries, I'd rather have Fox on both DK late slate and on FanDuel. So that's the tough part for Steph, but Steph playable, Wiggins playable. And I'm with you on the concept of Green, even though, especially on FanDuel, DK probably still wouldn't play Green though.
And then on the Clippers side, it's sort of no ownership either. We had 27% total ownership to the Warriors on FanDuel. It's 26 on the Clippers. And it's the same story. 8% to Chris Dunn, 6 to Harden, 5 to Zubats. These guys are really unappealing values, and I don't really see how you're getting to the Clippers. It's an interesting situation for FanDuel. It's an 8-game slate, but it's kind of just 7.
Yeah, I don't see a whole lot for the Clippers either. Harden, I've liked more than not, but the price tag's come up enough that I don't think you're really getting much value there. Powell, same thing. He's been great on the year, but the price is now caught up. Zubac, you could talk me into. I think still a good value for the DK late slate. Besides that, Kevin Porter Jr., noted great human being. I would be willing to play him in DFS, but still not really a great play for FanDuel, I don't think. Again, more DK late slate play. Yeah, nothing here looks good for FanDuel to me, unfortunately.
So what are we waiting on? The Indy news is really Steph, obviously on the FanDuel side, but at this point, are we only really waiting like Bilal Coulibaly for the Wizards, which I don't think will change anything too crazy. Like you start bumping up Keyshawn George and Corey Kispert, and I don't think that's going to create anything. It's Indy, right? Then whoever the 5th starter is for Phoenix will be important, I guess. Like whether that's Allen or Royce O'Neal or Okogie. Or even who starts at center, whether that's Plumlee or Iguodala, they could go a couple different directions there. But that Indy news looms large. That's what we're waiting on now.
Yeah, that's Indy. I think would greatly affect everything, and frankly, Turner a good play if he's in as well. So, kind of a really important spot on the slate. And I tend to think Turner's going to be out, and if that's the case, like I think that's you're tearing down the entire lineup. So for me, that's part of why I'll be willing to trade if we don't know Indy's news in the next hour with live before lock guys.
All right, Spags, we have reached the end of the line. You know the drill. Tell the people where to find you.
You can follow me on Twitter /X/Blue Sky. I don't know if I'm going to post on there. At Chris Spags on all of the above platforms. And before this show, whenever I'm doing the deeper dive, but I do it every Monday to Friday at 4 p.m. to stay out of the way of all the great stuff going on at Stokastic. My @SplashPlay NBA channel, I do a review, look at my projections, look at Stokastic ownership, run some sims, look at some prop markets. So another basketball video there for you people who I know can never watch enough basketball content. And shout out Josh too. Great seeing you again after a weekend where I know you were overjoyed for the fight game.
I was. I'm still paying for being up till 1 o'clock in the morning Friday night and Saturday night. Saturday was like 2. It was
that was rough. That was like a 1:30 knockout, and I was like, oh god, I just need to.
I could handle one of those 2 days. I learned pretty quickly that I can't handle them back to back and then get into the week again. So it's awful. It was awful. But anyway, we're gonna dip on out of here live before lock is coming up next. Greg Ehrenberg, Eric Lindquist, taking you all the way up till 7 o'clock. Peace.
Jordan, cry me a river. No, they're not.
They've already been hot. We're in playback.
Yeah, I was going to say, everybody in playback can hear me telling you what a bitch you are.
Yeah.
Okay, we're ready.
What is up, guys? And it is time for NBA Live Before Lock. Hope you all had a great weekend. Now, football's behind us. It is, well, not exactly, because there's NFL Live Before Lock after us. Houston Texans playing whatever
Dallas
is left
Cowboys.
of the Cowboys roster at this point. So NFL Live Before Lock after this, but much, much more importantly, at least from my standpoint, NBA Live Before Lock right now. If you guys could do us a favor while you're watching, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you are a Stokastic sub who has questions for myself and or Eric over the course of the show, tag me in Discord channel. All of our subs get access to Discord. And if you do tag me in the Discord during the show, I will be able to answer any questions that you guys have. And if you're looking to sign up for a Stokastic package, links are down below in the YouTube description box. You could also sign up at any of our affiliate partners. And for each one of the books that you sign up using that page that we have down below, it has to go through that link. You get 1 free month of core access to any sport of your choosing, and they do stack. So you can sign up for 12 of them. Get yourself a whole entire free year. So go check that out if you guys haven't already. All the different partners we have that you could sign up for currently on screen, courtesy of our producer, Jordan Klein. Eric, happy anniversary, first off.
Thank you.
That aside, how was the rest of your weekend?
Oh, it's great. Duke's birthday was yesterday. That was the other big one. So we got married on the 13th. We did our little weekend celebration. Then Duke's birthday's on the 17th. So that was yesterday. So he had like little pup cakes, and we kicked it with some friends, had him running around the yard during football. It was a lovely day, lovely weekend, but good to be back in the streets. Last Friday ended up going well, with the panic that we had there. I don't think we're going to have as much panic. I think we'll be able to sit on the news here, and it's yet another slate where you're going to want to be hanging out and playback right after this. I feel like this is something we're going to just be able to put on loop, but you're going to have Josh, you're going to have Greg on playback, covering everything. If that Miles Turner news drops beforehand.
There's NFL after this.
Oh. Well, fuck you. Sorry.
All right. Well, if Eric wants, he could go do that instead of the football.
I'm good.
I got to get myself dinner after this. I got playback. It's Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Fridays, but after football season ends, then there's going to be playback more days of the week. But to Eric's point, we do have key players who are on the injury report, and we did recently see Zach Edey's been ruled out for tomorrow. But as far as today's slate is concerned, and some of these are not on the DraftKings main slate, but are on FanDuel, so I'm just going to give you guys the rundown of all the players who are at least questionable to play today. Steph Curry is questionable. Miles Turner is questionable. Per what Eric said before, that is going to be a massive one. Turner being questionable. Then you've also got Bilal Coulibaly. He's questionable to play tonight. Mo Bamba questionable. That one doesn't really matter, but just kind of threw him into the mix there. But yeah, the ones that are most significant, Coulibaly, that could certainly have some impact. Miles Turner is going to be the most important. Steph Curry obviously would be important if he gets ruled out for the FanDuel slate, but I think that Steph Curry should be good to play today.
Yeah, left knee bursitis was the injury designation. I think he's going to be fine through that one. Sounds worse than what it is. I'm kind of on board with you. Obviously, I think the big one, the one we should all be highlight circle, just figuring out what's going on with Indy, because that's going to be chalk already and could be like mega nuclear chalk pending what happens with Miles Turner, who I do think is more likely to sit than play tonight.
Yeah, and I want to know also, as per usual, we always have these discussions. What do we want to do to potentially prepare for the Miles Turner news? Should we not get it prior to lock? There's only one game in the first game in the slate. Chicago Bulls at the Detroit Pistons, super high total, 234 points. If we don't have a Miles Turner update prior to lock, how is that going to impact how you plan your lineups?
Yeah, I'm probably looking at just kind of boosting a couple of these guys. I mean, Chicago-Detroit is an interesting one where, Cade Cunningham has just been awesome. Cade Cunningham is a good basketball player in a terrible wasteland for the most part. But he's pulling quite a bit of ownership. Not going to be hitting eject on that one. Jaden Ivey in there. We're waiting on Tim Hardaway Jr. still, I believe. That isn't official yet, but probably he should be able to rock, I would assume. So, we'll wait for that starting lineup just to make that official. But it's an interesting one. Whenever you're talking about Chicago being the early game, like a lot of these games, we've had Indy as an early game, whether it was the one where they were in Orlando or, sometimes at Indy, they have the 7 p.m. Eastern time start times. But I will not be fading the first game, Gregory. That is for sure. But I'm definitely going to have some Indy Toronto back end just kind of ramped up if we get to lock and nothing has come to fruition. I'm assuming Jarris Walker starts already. He's one of my highest owned players, if not going to end up being my highest owned player. I think Obi Toppin has a really strong chance to potentially jump into that starting lineup. Enrique Freeman's a guy who they dusted off. I didn't know who that was until I started research this morning, but TJ McConnell, one of the most important parts of the slate in terms of what we do with him. And guard has a huge opportunity cost attached to it. So it'd be nice to get Jarris Walker confirmed in there to potentially get another forward value in Obi Toppin and be able to jam some of the studs and go against my guy TJ, who's treated us well in the past.
Yeah, and right away, I see that we do have a question in Discord. This one coming to us from Hey, I'm Drew, who wants to know who are the DK cash game options for today, or actually just DK cash game option. Who are the players who we think are the must-play guys in cash? Now, keeping in mind that, like you said, Eric, that some of this could change, right? If Miles Turner is out, that drastically changes who some of the top priorities are for cash games. As of right now, though, I'm going to say with a very high degree of confidence of players that you definitely want in your cash games. Jared McCain, Cat, that's Karl-Anthony Towns, TJ McConnell, and Jarris Walker. And also, as far as Walker is concerned, he already looks really good and then would look even more good if Miles Turner is out.
Yes, he would. Very much so.
Anybody else you would add to that as somebody who's a necessity for a cash game?
Yeah, I just got done bashing on him, TJ McConnell, but I don't think, honestly, this is the weird thing about this slate is that it depends on what the news is and like what the iterations are and what your, exactly what contest you're in or who your heads are against in some people's occasions. But you're playing Jared McCain, you're playing Jarris Walker, you're playing, I believe, Cade Cunningham, no matter what, probably in cash. I think I would because I think the 9,300 is pretty easy to utilize. Then the Jaden Ivey, Tobias Harris versus Indy pieces kind of come into play because you don't want Obi Toppin in that lineup if he is not going to be starting because I think they could just go to the same rotations for him as normal. I think he'd look awesome if you got Miles Turner out there, even if he's coming off the bench, but I don't think he's cash viable over Tobias Harris and Jaden Ivey in the early game if that news hasn't broken yet because you'd rather just play opponents that might be stuck with the bag in that spot. But anybody else you would add? I mean, Jared McCain just stone cold lock.
Nah, just the guys that I mentioned. I think that should be good. If anything changes, which pretty good chance it will due to injuries, then hey, I'm Drew. It's something that we're definitely going to be updating on the show as players get ruled in, ruled out. Jordan, there's a couple super chats here. Are these ones from last show that Josh already answered or not yet? Okay. Were people able to hear what Jordan's answer was just now?
No, but it was hilarious and I enjoyed it very much.
It was
Talk
very
more
unintentionally funny, but Jordan's answer was, I don't think Josh answered anything last show. Just there was nothing of use, according to Jordan, from the hour that Josh was on during the deep dive. But we do have a couple of super chats here. One is from Olrat14. He wants to know, Iguodaro, how many minutes is he going to play? And is he somebody who we should be rostering for tonight? Let's see. What is our projection on Iguodaro, who I don't have in lineups right now?
I have 0 of him. So that's cool.
Let's see. I'll tell you how many minutes we have him projected for. We have Iguodaro in for 21 and a half minutes. And typically big men are good fantasy producers. I'm not sure that is going to be the case for Iguodaro. We currently have him as well under a fantasy point per minute. We actually have him for today at like 0.7-ish fantasy points per minute, it looks like at first glance. So it's not somebody who I think I'm going to want to be getting to. Let's look at his overall game logs for the season so far, just get an idea for what kind of a fantasy producer he's been. Yeah, it's not great. He's playing 14 and a half minutes per game and averaging under 10 and a half fantasy points. So then it becomes a question of realistically, what is his playing time upside, which I don't think is super high. But yeah, based on his points per minute rate so far this season, which is kind of all we have to go off of because he's a rookie, it looks like he'd need to be playing somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 minutes to be viable, and that's probably not happening.
No, it is not. It's really hard when he's 3,400 to bypass somebody who's going to play high 20s minutes, I totally get it. I would be far more inclined to play like a Ryan Dunn. I couldn't do it. I don't think I can play Iguodaro. There are some places that have him projected just kind of stupidly, but don't look at those.
Look at this. Joel Embiid. We just got an update here. Nick Nurse said that Joel Embiid will warm up to see if he could play Monday. He is still listed as doubtful, but
Stop it.
What was that?
Stop it. For real?
Yep. Yeah. Nick Nurse said that Joel Embiid will warm up to see if he's feeling well enough to play. So he is doubtful on the injury report, but this seems to supersede what's on the injury report.
You should single game parlay unders for Paul George, for McCain. You should just take like all their PRA and just parlay them.
That's a good call. Let's see. And there we go.
You should just do it. Do it now.
It might already be too late at this point.
Putting it in here, sand.
Yeah, I'm looking. The props have actually moved down quite a bit as a result of this. Like I just looked at some of the players. So Jared McCain, for instance, his points prop on FanDuel was 22.5, and now it's 20, and now it's 20.5 juice towards the under. So there's been pretty big line movement that's already taken this.
My guess is you might have some people in the stadium. I know that's something that I know books don't love to hear that, but you get these people at stadiums who can watch something take place and potentially take advantage of it. That's happening more and more in the live markets, and it's been a conversation piece I've seen on X a little bit, or maybe it's, kind of smaller deal. Oh, Miles Turner's out. That seems important.
There we go. Yeah. I mean, the other thing too is this Nick Nurse, the 76ers update. It came out a couple of minutes ago. You realistically have 15 to 20 seconds to react to this kind of news at a sports book. So you got to be really, really quick to it. And it used to be easier, but it's hard while we're on shows. But that's the big part too. Totally. It was just 20 seconds had already elapsed and the lines had already moved for it. But anyway, we're going to have to keep our eye on Joel Embiid. It seems like he is now live to play today. So that's a piece of news that we're going to have to break down, as well as the Miles Turner piece. Since we're already talking about Joel Embiid, it's not like the Miles Turner thing is changing anytime soon. Let's finish talking about Joel Embiid, and then by the time we're done with this, our projections are probably going to be updated for Miles Turner, and we could touch on that. So we'll have a full picture of everything. What do we do if Joel Embiid plays? How does that impact? Like, Jared McCain is expected to be the most popular player on the entire slate. He clearly isn't a bad option by any stretch of the imagination if Embiid is in, but it would certainly lower his projection. So what would you make of McCain as an option if Embiid is in, and how also would this impact other players on Philly?
I'd probably try to get way below the field to some extent on McCain. It's a pure usage thing. I mean, Joel Embiid is going to command usage. We don't have any kind of sample size to really base it off of because Joel Embiid's played a grand total of 2 basketball games this season, but he got up to 33 minutes against Orlando in a spot where he still didn't look 100%, but he took 15 shots. He got to the line for 10 free throws. He scored 20 points. He's still going to command usage. It's him. It's Paul George on the floor at the same time. And, you're just getting a guy at 5,800 who, with both of them out, has just been outrageous and revelatory. But there's also these games where he puts 30, 31 minutes together, puts up 38. And I don't think you would want, you have to make me think about it for a second on if I'd want 38 here out of this spot. He doesn't add anything in terms of rebound rate. He never will, really. Assists go way down in some of these spots. He had 10 against Cleveland where he commanded the whole thing, and they tried to win that as hero ball. But otherwise, 4-2-2-2. It's like he'd become a pure, you're trying to fade 25 points, and I would be more than happy to do that against Miami. It's not the same complete situation with Terry Rozier out. You're going to get somebody, Delon Wright is also gone, which I think is actually something that matters because defensively, we've seen him for Milwaukee do all right things already this season. That's kind of what he's there to do in that starting lineup when he's starting for Damian Lillard. But I look at Miami as the kind of matchup where it's uncomfortable. I wouldn't completely say I'd full fade him. I'm pretty sure I'd rerun stuff, though, and get way under the field on McCain.
Yeah, so as far as McCain goes, as of this second, he is, let's see, my What number rostered player? So the only player I have more of than Jared McCain right now is Jarius Walker. And obviously that would change significantly if Joel Embiid is out.
Yep, it would change significantly for me too. But I'm such a calm, cool, collected personality that I'm telling you as best as I can that I would still have a little bit, but I wouldn't be full fading. He just would look exponentially worse by leaps and bounds.
So we've got, by the way, Jason Farnsworth says his doubtful. I assume he's talking about Joel Embiid. And we just got word from Nick Nurse that Joel Embiid is apparently feeling a little bit better and he's going to try to warm up and play. So we'll see what ends up happening there. Also, for people who are saying that I have a lot of echo on playback, is it echo when I'm talking or is it echo when Eric's talking? Because it seems kind of counterintuitive, but if when I'm talking it's echoing, it's something on Eric's end. If it's echoing when Eric talks, it's on my end. All right. It's on Eric's end.
What did I do? Is this better?
We'll have to ask the people. Yeah, guys. If the echo is still there when I'm talking, we've got Eric is trying to figure it out on his end over there, but
still me. All right, I'll just put my headphones in then today. I thought I had fixed something on my end to be able to not do headphones, but it's just like, oh, it says no echo. Fantastic. Whatever. I'll just put the headphones in so it's not an issue. He says no echo. Odd. Whatever.
Yeah, that's somebody in YouTube though.
Okay. Well.
All right. So this should fix it now. It should be completely gone on playback now. So that Eric putting in headphones should be a non-issue anymore. Now, 76ers will need an update on the Joel Embiid situation. Best guess, do you think he plays or sits?
I mean, this just happened. I'm going through Twitter like crazy right now, trying to see if there's any video for anything on it, just so I can get an idea of
I don't think warm-ups have started yet. Because he's going to warm up prior to the game just to see how he feels physically.
I mean, it's an illness, and like if he was just so sick that it's like I can't play, he would just sit. I would say he's probably more likely to play now, which, I mean, welcome to your edge, Jared McCain. He'll still be pretty popular, still like a third of lineups more than likely. He won't be in half of lineups. People watching the show, people who know what they're doing, they'll see this. They'll recognize that Joel Embiid commands a lot of usage. No shit. But Jared McCain, yeah, that'll definitely be an issue. No doubt about it.
Let's see if there are any other questions in Discord regarding Embiid. Not at the moment. So let's go and talk about the Indiana Pacers situation where we're currently awaiting a starting lineup for the Pacers. That is something that hasn't come through yet. So we also don't have projections updated quite yet. That should be happening soon, though. So I'll start with this, Eric. Who do you expect to start for the Pacers? Because this center situation has been a disaster for them. Backup center, torn Achilles. Third string center, also torn Achilles. And that being James Wiseman and Isaiah Jackson. So now, without Miles Turner in the mix, does Obi Toppin move into the starting lineup, or do they go a different direction? Who do you think ultimately becomes the starting five?
Yeah, it's interesting because you get on the other side of this one, Jakob Poeltl. I don't think Enrique Freeman, I mean, he's 6'7". I did a lot of digging into him today. He's an Akron kid, shout out LeBron. But I got to think that Obi Toppin's the major leader in the clubhouse, that it goes Halliburton, Mathurin, Walker, Siakam, Obi Toppin. And it's just going to have to be a community effort to slow down Poeltl. At least you get Agbaji, Davion Mitchell, not exactly offensively forward. Grady Dick has north of a 26% usage this season with no Barnes and with no Emmanuel Quickley on the floor. So he'll be out there, looking to score and create. But I mean, Jakob Poeltl is in such a smash spot now. I mean, he was already in a smash spot going up against Indy front court. Now no Miles Turner. I just don't know how they slow him down. I think Obi Toppin gets the first crack at it.
Same.
You might get James Johnson minutes today, which is not something that I was expecting to say in my lifetime. But, I mean, James Johnson's legitimately somebody that could come out there and, I mean, the guy is tough as nails. He's going to give you effort. I think James Johnson's pretty live to enter this rotation in an actual way. So, Yeah, I think Enrique Freeman, James Johnson end up being your backups, but Obi Toppin probably gets the first crack.
Yeah, I'm thinking Obi Toppin starts, and then boy, let's look at some other recent games where the backup center minutes have been going to. So, all right, recent games. This team is just so crazy shorthanded at this point.
Yep.
I mean, we've got no Miles Turner tonight, no Ben Shepherd, no Aaron Nesmith, no Andrew Nemhard, Isaiah Jackson out for the season, James Wiseman out for the season. So, what was their rotation last game? Miles Turner had to play 40 minutes.
Yep.
Toppin
Enrique Freeman played 13.
Yeah, Toppin played 18.
My thing is, it's really hard to know what they're going to do because they played Miami, where it's Bam Adebayo out there. And looking at some of the minutes overlapping here, I find it hard to believe that Pascal Siakam isn't playing a boatload, especially considering they're going back to Toronto. I think whenever you go to a place like Toronto, where it's the only team in Canada, I do look at guys like Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan, Pascal Siakam through a little bit of a different lens. I try not to skew the data too much, but I definitely look at a guy like Pascal Siakam where, barring foul trouble, you could see him play north of 40 minutes. Like, it wouldn't shock me whatsoever. Obi Toppin, he's going to get the first crack, I would think, at this. 18 minutes there, but it's going to just have to be a full-on committee to trust. And the other part is Jakob Poeltl's been awesome this season. I know it hasn't resulted in winning for Toronto, but he's always been a very good NBA player. And now he's just going to be playing, he's like the evolved 8th grade kid who's just 7 inches taller than everybody and is just holding the basketball above his head as nobody can reach it. Like, Jakob Poeltl's in a smash spot. I think they have to bring minutes in for Enrique Freeman for sure. You're probably looking at like 14, 15 for him minimum. I do think James Johnson plays a little bit more here at 3K, and he's got the kind of like disposition. Like, we know he's a black belt and one of those guys that's just an insane, tough guy. I think James Johnson is probably the guy you want to roll out there if things aren't going well defensively for you against Poeltl.
Yeah, and I was just looking to see if there was any beat reporters on Twitter that said anything about an expected starting lineup for the Pacers, but nothing out there as of yet. The other thing I was trying to think too, who was the guy who was like 6'5", or maybe he was 6'6"? He might have even been 6'4", that they started at center when they were really shorthanded last year. You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. I'll think of the name here in a second. He's listed as like a small forward on DK, and we would talk about him like, what are we actually doing with our lives? There were definitely some, what are you doing with your live moments here? But
Terry Taylor.
Terry Taylor, there it was.
Shout out to Rinpack in the chat. One of the other things, the reason I bring him up is we've seen the Pacers do this in the past, where they say, our big men are all out. We're just going to go small ball today. So when we're talking about guys like Enrique Freeman potentially playing center minutes, he's 6'7", which may seem small for a center, but Terry Taylor, let's look up the dimensions of Terry Taylor.
He's like 6'5", but he was thick. He was thickums. And that's my thing with James Johnson. That's literally my thinking on it. James Johnson's 6'8". He at least gives you size and he gives you toughness. Like, that's been his MO. I mean, he's my age. He's 37 years old. He's in a little bit better shape than I am at the moment. We'll give him that. But 6'8", I think, is about as good as you can ask for there. Obi Toppin 6'9". Again, I'm just looking at like behind them, how they basically divvy up some of these minutes. This is definitely going to be something. And the reason somebody's saying, are we talking about defense? What are we? It's like, we're trying to just separate how many minutes so that we can get accurate projections on the guys like Halliburton, on McConnell, on Matherin. Like, these guys are going to be playing so much more. And if they go small ball here and try to force Poeltl off a floor, well, not only is it going to look better for Poeltl, but it's going to matter big time as far as just like how much we get to them in our portfolio. Like, their chances of failure in a game that this isn't going to move outside of a 4.5, 5.5 spread, probably, even with Miles Turner out. And that's going to create just an absolute headache here when we finish things up on the projection end.
All right. For anybody who was sweating our Rookie of the Year bets, Eric, I have bad news for you. Good news for me. Paul Skeens just won Rookie of the Year.
I hedged it.
It was just officially announced. That's something that's going on right now. So I had some long shot tickets on Paul Skeens for Rookie of the Year. And that is now official. AL Rookie of the Year should be announced shortly as well. Some questions that are coming into our super chats. We got one from Avi. Avi Schreier wants to know, Ayo Dosunmu or Brandon Pajemski over on FanDuel. It's a little hard to say without a status update on Steph. I don't love Dosunmu for today, so I'm going to say Pajemski for a couple reasons. Number one, maybe Steph Curry sits, and that would make him look better, because Pajemski would be great if Steph Curry doesn't play. His usage rate is insanely high without Steph. But the other part of this, too, is that if other value opens up during that, you just have a guy who's in a later starting time.
Nothing like going out and acquiring a Josh Giddey just so you can bench him in crunch time for Ayo Dosunmu at times. I mean, way to go, Chicago. Really well done. Genius by you. But Ayo Dosunmu is not going to be it for me. He played, 25, 26, 24 here the last three. Two of those were competitive against the Knicks and Cleveland. One of them was not the Houston one. The suit is not black. But Ayo Dosunmu is good at real-life basketball. I don't think without one of the guards out, you're going to probably see us roster or talk about him unless that price gets way down there on either site. I think it's probably Pajemski, even though I don't want to do it. I'd probably just say neither.
We've got the answer for me is neither, but if it just has to be one or the other, I'm going to lean towards Pajemski. Most likely to end up swapping off of him as more news ends up opening up throughout the night here. Let's go to our projections really quick. If you wouldn't mind pulling this up on screen, Jordan, we do have a projections update for the Indiana Pacers. So we'll see the way that our data team is leaning towards how the projections and what the rotation is going to look like shaping up here for the Indiana Pacers. And most notably, no real surprises here, but massive, massive value on three guys from the Indiana Pacers, Eric. Jarius Walker, Obi Toppin, TJ McConnell, they all look great now. And also, Miles Turner being out in a small way benefits TJ McConnell just because they probably are forced to play a little bit more of small ball lineups. It adds another potential way for TJ McConnell to get more minutes. The question with TJ McConnell in these value spots, it's never really will he perform on the court, because 9 times out of 10, he does from a points per minute fantasy perspective. It's just, will he actually get those minutes? And you never quite know, but I do think this at least adds a little bit more of a ceiling and floor for that playing time. We've got Obi Toppin expected to start here in for 32 minutes. And this also shores up the playing time for Jarius Walker a little bit. As far as the backup bigs, we don't have anybody projected in a way where it makes them look all that playable, though.
Yeah, the question with TJ McConnell has always been, are they going to play him and Tyrese Halliburton on the floor together? You know, the times that I've pulled the trigger on TJ McConnell has been when he's sub 5%, sub 10%. He leads this team out of everybody active right now in fantasy points per minute on the season, 1.11. James Wiseman, Isaiah Jackson, both out for the season. They're 1-2, which is weird to look at. But Tyrese Halliburton's at 1.80, having a terrible season. There are a couple of games that I've watched this year where I'm shocked that they don't just close with TJ McConnell, because he's been performing much better. And you can obviously see it on the floor, which as an Iowa State guy never makes me feel great because I want to cheer for Halliburton. But TJ McConnell should have to share the floor here. Exactly what you said. I think that creates a chasm where it's just like very hard to get away from 4,100 TJ McConnell. If Miles Turner had been in, those are just minutes that have to be divvied up elsewhere. Like they're going to have to play some minutes probably for Siakam at the 5, or, Obi Toppin is probably starting at the 5, but like there's just so many ways where now TJ McConnell can sneak into an extra 3-4 minutes. He's unavoidable for me now. In cash, you should absolutely be playing all three of these guys, but TJ McConnell specifically, I was looking at fading pending that news. If it was going to be coming into lock or get close, I will not be fading in any way, shape, or form anymore.
Yeah, I'm about to rerun lineups here. Let's see if we have an ownership update. If not, it will be soon. I'll also read off some of the FanDuel projections for the Pacers because it's updated obviously for both sites at the exact same time. And I mean, the value guys look the exact same over on FanDuel as they do on DraftKings, where we've got Jarius Walker, Obi Toppin, TJ McConnell. They're also projecting as 3 of the top value plays over on FanDuel. $4,400 price tag on McConnell, 27.6 fantasy point projection. And these are the FanDuel price and projections. $4,100 for Obi Toppin, 28 FanDuel fantasy points. Jarius Walker, $4,600, 29.69 FanDuel fantasy points. All guys we're going to want to play. All guys also, to the question we got earlier from Hey, I'm Drew, play all these guys in cash games. FanDuel, DraftKings, all 3 are looking like really strong options. And let's see what else we have from Super Chats, because I think some of these came in. So here's what we'll do, Eric. Let's answer the rest of the questions that are outstanding. Then we'll do Nuke of the Night, and then we'll see however else the Joel Embiid and whatever other news breaks for the remaining portion of the show. We've got Aiden Quest. Oh, no, there was the super chat here from RADM. He said, I've seen some sites have the most points scored by X and Y positions against this team stat. How often do you consider this type of thing for each matchup? Never.
Never once.
And here's the problem. Well, there's numerous issues with it, but it's so much missing context where let's say your schedule. And also, people use small sample size, like, oh, this team's getting killed by centers lately. Centers are scoring 60 fantasy points against them over the last week. And who are those centers, right? If you went up against Nikola Jokic in your last game, that's a way different situation than if you went up against Daniel Gafford in your last game and how that might impact how many fantasy points your team is allowed to that position. So not something I really consider at all. You could use some common sense approaches. For instance, you've got the situation that Eric brought up before. Jakob Poeltl's in a much better spot with Miles Turner being out. Now, with that said, it's already incorporated a lot of this into our data because the props at sportsbooks, that is something that is a piece of our projections. It's something that's taken into account. So the prop numbers are going to go up a little bit for Jakob Poeltl as a result of these news, and therefore it's going to be accounted for in our projections. You don't want to be double and triple counting things with some aspects that are already being taken into account for. But anyway, RADM, not something I really consider. Malukar wants to know core for a small field single entry on FanDuel, and thanks. So for sure, Jarius Walker will be topping in TJ McConnell, correct, Eric?
Correct. Yes.
All right, so we're going to say those guys. If Joel Embiid is out, well, honestly, Jared McCain's a strong option either way, but whether he's a core option or not is going to depend on whether Joel Embiid is in or out. Now, I know a lot of you guys might be thinking, well, McCain's going to be playing a lot of minutes at shooting guard anyway. Yeah, but his amount of usage he gets while he's out on the court is definitely going to be impacted by whether
Correct.
Joel Embiid is in or out today. So that's one piece that I'll say we're going to need some more information on. Trey Lyles is still super cheap on FanDuel, and De'Aaron Fox also, who just has infinity ball handling responsibilities and usage opportunity with all the guys out for the Kings. So the Pacers guys that we just went over, Trey Lyles, De'Aaron Fox, all guys that are really strong. I also have Paul George to the mix. It's only $7,300 on FanDuel, so he's a really good option, assuming Joel Embiid was to be out. So some more information that needs to be had, but I'll say those guys. Anybody else you'd consider a core play on FanDuel?
You hit all the highlights. I mean, then it would just be kind of preference for a couple of plays here, a couple of plays there between you and I. I think you hit the core guys correctly.
All right, Bilal Coulibaly, he has been ruled out. So I was just about to update my lineups, and I might as well wait for another projection and data update because why run it and then have Coulibaly projections update halfway through and pause the sim to rerun? But Coulibaly's out. Is that going to change anything significant for you?
Not significant. I was just updating my stuff over here. The one thing that is going to happen is I'm giving a little bit of a boost up to the rebound rate of Kyle Kuzma, to Mr. Carrington, to Keyshawn George as well. I always want to say Keontae whenever I see K George on the page, but yeah, Keyshawn George should probably step into the starting lineup here. They're still without Sadiq Bey, Bilal Coulibaly out. I mean, they've just shown time and time again that Corey Kispert is like eternally going to come off the bench, it would appear. So I think I'm just kind of updating everything for those rates. We do have Malcolm Brogdon back here too. He played 22 minutes right from the get-go. I don't know if you watched any of that Detroit game. He looked awful. He was just like handing the ball off, not doing anything. It was kind of strange. That showed up in this box score for what it's worth as I'm pulling that up. But Carrington looks a little bit better, but I can't imagine he's going to show up in more than like a lineup or two for me.
Eden Queskin is saying, not much love for Plumlee today. What do we think? And then he wants to know favorite shooting guard on DraftKings. But first, Mason Plumlee, is he somebody who you have much love for today, Eric?
It's Orlando. That's the biggest problem. So Greg is bringing up like, oh, have you looked against this team, that team? Exactly. But like, we can look at certain teams and the implied total way down in the doldrums. You have Goga Bitadze, who, despite the fact that he got benched at one point last season, was playing some of the best defensive ball of any center in the entire league. And now it's just very difficult. Wendell Carter, we got the news that he's officially going to be out here again. We're still, without Paulo Banchero there, of course, but Goga Bitadze can play some defense. I'm more inclined to play Goga at 5,100 than I am Miles Plumlee right now at 4,800. Ever so slightly, but there's iterations. I mean, this Iguodaro character has just been kind of a problem in some of those minutes. Plumlee's been getting opportunities to get up to 29, 30, not really doing a ton with him, but I mean, it is a one-man show out there with Devin Booker here at the moment. You're getting a little something from Tyus Jones. You're getting Grayson Allen having to take on some more of that usage here, double-digit attempts in 3 consecutive games now and having to take on more of a scoring role. Was one of the best three-point shooters in the league last season. But God, it is such an ugly basketball game that nothing from it is really a priority for me.
We've got, there was a follow-up there, and Aiden wants to know who's our favorite shooting guard on DraftKings. So, let me check. Who does TJ McConnell have shooting guard eligibility or just point guard?
No, just point guard. Him and Halliburton, you're doing one or the other, and well, probably doing some in both in lineups. It's just gross.
All right, so favorite shooting guard, if Joel Embiid is to be out, it's pretty clearly Jared McCain for me.
So yeah, Jared McCain would be the smash of all smashes still. You'd still pick him at shooting guard if you get him out correct.
If Joel Embiid is in, once again, I would still like Jared McCain, but it would bring my exposure to him down. He wouldn't project quite as well, therefore I get less lineups with him. Grayson Allen, pretty good value play as well at $3,800 on DraftKings. So that would be a cost-saving option, who I like quite a bit.
Correct.
Next question is from Salah Abdallah. Salah wants to know, with this news, in one FanDuel GPP lineup, do you prefer Jakob Poeltl or Cat at center? It would still be Cat for me.
On FanDuel, it is Jakob Poeltl for me.
Yeah, I'll go Cat. And then also he wants to know, would TJ McConnell be an option as a point guard one lineup? Absolutely.
Yeah, in any site, any format, correct.
Ryan Schnabel wants to know, this is a 2v2 question. Cade Cunningham and Jarace Walker, Ivy and Siakam. And then he says, thanks for the content as always, fella. Cade Cunningham and Jarace Walker.
What was the first one of that?
The first one was Jarace Walker and Cade Cunningham.
Oh, yeah,
The
by a long shot.
Jaden Ivey and Pascal Siakam.
Yeah, by a long shot. I just saw that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, really hard for me to get away from Jarace Walker. He's going to be my most rostered player on the entire slate.
Mine too. Him and Obi Toppin, probably, if Toppin starts. Yeah.
Yeah. Both of those guys, really, really highly owned players. It's probably going to be, I think it's going to be Jarace Walker for me. I still have to run an update on everything, but at the very least, he's going to be my second most rostered player.
There you go.
Avi Schreier wants to know who's going to guard McCain. NBA doesn't really work that way. It's usually team defense, and then also, substitutions. Players are coming in and out. It's not one guy who's going to be like, oh, you're the cover man on Jared McCain for the night. There's a lot of switches as well that happen in basketball. You're not going to see one guy who's on him for like the entirety of the game.
Yeah, there's only like a couple of teams that I'll do like major adjustments for, but the team total does a lot of that for you. I mean, we have Oklahoma City that can play with pace, but also is so good defensively that it's not going to change a lot for you. They have multiple guys who can switch. There's been a couple of instances in my lifetime, in years of doing this, where I've said, all right, I don't want to deal with Alex Caruso defense for 36 minutes. I've done that a couple of times and just kind of like hit the eject on a massive chalk piece, but it's really hard to do. And if you get in a habit of trying to guess yourself for that, you're throwing darts more so than you think.
Jordan's got it up on screen. We do have the Wizards projections updated, and it creates no real significant value plays.
Yep, I parsed through that. You have just too many guys that are 5K that are the main beneficiaries, whether that's Sarr, George, Kispert. It just really doesn't create anything. It's a Knicks team that they're facing in the Garden. It's very, very problematic to try to get to anything. Kuzma, I was actually getting a couple lineups as I changed some stuff there, but he just looks awful relative to the range. Strongly prefer Siakam for 400 more. Strongly prefer Josh Hart for 600 more. Strongly prefer Anunoby for 400 less. So yeah, give me the Knicks side of things far more than the Washington side.
All right, we've got all the super chats answered. So let's do the nuke of the night. Then we'll get back to answering any other questions that come in and any other further news in the final 20 minutes of the show here. If you guys haven't done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, play the animation, Jordan. Time for the nuke of the night. Bang, bang, bang. There it is, Eric. So we've had lots of updates over the course of the show. I don't know if that's changed who your nuke of the night was going to be, but it doesn't matter now. All we need to know is who it is as of right now. So, Eric, who is a tournament play who's going to be really important to your lineups that you want to be using here for your nuke of the night?
Yeah, so we've done a lot of conversations about how when there's a bunch of value that opens up, then you can get the expensive guys. We have Damian Lillard back here from Milwaukee. That's going to definitely hurt Giannis, and I think Giannis is still somebody that I'll get to a lineup or two that makes some sense there. But I mean, his price tag is a little bit problematic on every site. FanDuel, 12K, everything here. So let's talk about another thing that happens when we get tons of value that opens up. You changed the landscape by trying to get to some pieces. It's not that you're trying to game stack by any means, but I love the pace that Indy brings into it. More TJ McConnell on the floor. Not a great defender by any means. I am obsessed with getting to Jakob Poeltl and RJ Barrett. I'll make RJ Barrett my nuke of the night purely because you see his rates go up about 0.05 fantasy points per minute, 1.27 DraftKings points per minute in 306 minutes this season without Scotty Barnes and without Emmanuel Quickly. He is playing gobs of minutes on the other side. And the other thing that he does is he eats up some positionality here. Small forward, power forward. We have Walker. We have Toppin. We have, on the expensive end, I think we'll see Pascal Siakam definitely take a step up here with some of the rebounding rates. But I love getting to some of these Toronto pieces in addition to the Indy. Just give me all of that game because if it ends up smashing, I want all of it. RJ Barrett, a huge part of my lineups now. RJ Barrett, nuke of the night.
If you're looking for, we don't really see that much leverage opportunities in NBA because players aren't correlated in the same way as they are in, say, football. Certainly not the same as they are in something like baseball. But one thing that really stands out to me, now we've got all this value. So we got pay up options and kind of like what you were talking about, Eric, is trying to figure out, all right, we've got all this extra money to spend up. Where do we want to be using it? There's a lot of ownership going to Karl-Anthony Towns. He is nearly 50% owned right now. You know who's not going owned, Eric, in a great matchup? Jalen Brunson against the Washington Wizards. It could very easily be a Jalen Brunson night. I know Cat has been the guy on offense for the Knicks this year, and he's been just an absurdly good fantasy producer. But I think there's a really significant ceiling in Jalen Brunson that's going overlooked. He's only around 10% owned right now. So if you're looking to get a pay-up option, who's not all that difficult to fit into lineups because $8,900 is quite a bit less expensive than he was last year, but also potential for a little bit of leverage off of Cat. If Brunson has a big game and he's the one who has the higher usage today, well, that's going to come away from Karl-Anthony Towns. And another thing too is this is also pretty speculative. And it's not something, I don't want to take Cat out of my lineups because of this or anything, but this is a guy who missed time recently because his knee was banged up. This is a home game for the Knicks against the Wizards. And I know that Tibbs typically likes to run his guys into the ground, but even Tom Thibodeau, I think, would have to recognize that if there's one guy you take off the court a little bit earlier because of a blowout, would it be Cat in this situation, Eric?
Yes, it would be. But the problem with that is they really don't want to play Huck Porty or Jericho Sims. I mean, these guys are not good.
If it's a 30-point game in the fourth quarter, Tibbs has typically left his starters in. I think Cat's the first guy who comes out in that situation.
All right. I love that. Yeah. I mean, he can keep the wings out there forever. And then you definitely have, with no Deuce McBride out there, campaign that ends up probably being somebody who can go shut it down for you. They've been dusting off Matt Ryan for a minute here, a minute there. He's been showing up on Popcorn Machine for me doing minutes updates in the morning, but I'm with you so much. I love all of the Knicks for tournaments. I love Bridges. I think Anunoby is an amazing tournament play today. I'm with you. I really like this team up against Washington. Once again, it's about the pace. It's about the defensive opportunity. What does suck, Bilal Coulibaly is one of the worst defenders that I have evaluated. Dunks and Threes has him as a 6th percentile defender in the NBA. Kaishan George is decent enough, 40th percentile so far. You're adding more minutes for a better defender there against the wings, but I'm so with you. Jordan Poole, he ain't it, friends. Definitely love your Jalen Brunson call.
Yeah, and just once again, not somebody who is going to be in 80% of my lineups or anything like that, but I'll have more than 10% of him, and I think he's a good leverage play off of Cat for the slate. Let's see what else we have for questions from Discord. And the next question here, it is coming to us from scrolling. Here we go. Mike 1377. Who are our top 3 pay-up options on FanDuel, Eric? So if you're looking to spend up on FanDuel, who are the 3 guys overall that you think make the most sense?
De'Aaron Fox makes some sense.
Yep.
I also loved, I have a couple lineups that I made over here and playing today.
Pascal Siakam.
Pascal Siakam, definitely. I think a guy also, I mean, I talked just poo-pooed that game hard, but Franz Wagner is just ridiculous in terms of usage right now. I think he's at least interesting. He's showing up a lot more for me over on the FanDuel side of things. Let's see. But he's not going to be my favorite when it's all said and done. I'll put Cat in there as well. I mean, I like Jakob Poeltl a ton. I have more of him, but I like Cat too. They're making up over 65% of my center play over there.
Yeah. So one of them is clearly De'Aaron Fox. That's just the easiest one to say.
Correct.
Top pay up option over on FanDuel. And then beyond that, I think you get a lot of guys who are good, but definitely not on the level of De'Aaron Fox. So let's see. If I'm actually going to isolate my top overall pay up options on FanDuel, Fox, Paul George is one of them. If there's no Joel Embiid, I don't even know if we're considering a pay up option at $7,300. It's like, bro, it's sort of it's cheap relative to Paul George, especially if there's no Joel Embiid. And then Devin Booker as well at $8,700. Plus, it's got great positionality because they've added small forward to Devin Booker over on FanDuel. He's only been shooting guard for pretty much the entirety of his career. So I'll add Devin Booker to the mix as well, with the Suns being really shorthanded. We've got S.A. Johnson wants to know, what are our thoughts on Duren? He says he's playing a ton of him today.
On DK's okay. I would say we have so much like cheap Pacers value that I don't think I'm going to land on him. I'm rerunning my lineups as we're talking right now. I had more Duren. I am kind of a Duren guy. He wasn't really showing up for me this morning. And now that we've gotten this value and I can play more Cat, I can play more Jakob Poeltl, I can play Goga, who I think is a really good tournament option today. I think some people have just kind of worn thin on Goga here lately. Probably don't land on as much as what I was thinking against the Bulls here. Vooch is awful, but yeah, it's still going to be a lot more of those other guys that I mentioned.
The problem is, this happens all the time on NBA slates. There's an upside for Duren, $6,100. He was over $7K at the tail end of last year. But when you get all of these great value options that open up, we also have a super chat that I'm going to tie into this because it's kind of related as well. Because we had Bang Bronley said on FanDuel, you go stars and scrubs lineups or balanced build for today. Whenever these slates open up where there's a ton of value, it's really hard to get away from Jarace Walker. It's hard to get away from Obi Toppin. And if you're playing these guys, you also just have to spend up for stars, use the rest of your salary. So by force, it's stars and scrubs, unless you're foregoing the Pacers guys, which I think is a mistake.
I'm 100% with you.
So stars and scrubs it is, and that's one of the reasons as well that Duren doesn't become any kind of real priority play. We also have a super chat from Avi Schreier. He wants to know, is Zach LaVine playable? Yeah, Zach LaVine's definitely playable.
Yeah, 100%.
And now we've got a question here from Stokes. He wants to know, who do we smash on DK for 8K and above as a pay up? Is there one guy who's over 8K do you get way more exposure to than anybody else?
Karl Anthony Towns.
Cat's a good option. What would you make of Joel Embiid if he plays?
Oh, I love Joel Embiid. I will jam Joel Embiid if he plays, because how many times do you get like a 2% Joel Embiid, 5% Joel Embiid it's specifically in the $4? Like we can have a conversation about the $15. There's enough people playing 150 that I think enough people will find their way onto Joel Embiid with the value that we have. But in that $4.20 max, there are too many lineups and too few of people doing anything with those lineups. I'll probably play 100% Joel Embiid in the $4 in the event that he plays.
Yeah, I would very, very much like Joel Embiid if he is out there. I mean, we've got all these value options.
Yep.
And there isn't really a clear-cut top spend-up guy. There's guys I like as spend-ups, but nothing to the extent of, somebody who's as strong of an option as Joel Embiid, at least not in terms of upside. You're going to be able to get him at crazy, crazy low ownership. So
I have a question, because I think this is probably the most important thing with 9 minutes left that I'm probably going to do in my lineups. And I'm curious if you're having the same thought. I think Jaden Ivey looks a lot better as a shooting guard option to get to, because if you're going to get away from McCain And I know having the lineup spots with Mather in there at 6,500 shooting guard, small forward, and we have so much exposure to Indy, it probably doesn't matter. But once this game, the Detroit-Chicago unlocks, I think Jaden Ivey at like 25%, he becomes like the best mid-range shooting guard option as opposed to Jared McCain at 5,800. I'm going to give Jaden Ivey a boost and get to a little bit more.
I was already getting to some of Jaden Ivey, though.
I wasn't. I had like 0. I had next to 0. I got 28% of my last run, and I'm happy now.
Okay. Yeah. No, I don't have an issue with Ivey at all. I think that he's a reasonable upside option. He's had some really big games this year. He did last year as well. He's just inconsistent, but we don't care about that as much for tournaments. No. Pierre wants to know, is Zubats in play on FanDuel? He's $300 less than Pirtle. I mean, sure, in play. I just like other guys a lot more than him. I'd rather play Pirtle than Zubats.
I would too, and also Ty Lue's the devil.
There we go. Nick Rue wants to know, how many Pacers is too many? 5?
5 is too. No, it depends. You better bring a Toronto guy along on 5. 5 isn't too many. I have one lineup I'm looking at with 5. I'm kind of contemplating running it out in cash, but we'll see. Mainly, the thing is, I'm playing 100% Obi Toppin. You know, we had that conversation about Jarris Walker or him. I'm playing 50 lineups, and I've got cash. I've got 3 max, and I'm looking through everything. I'm going to just jam 100% Obi Toppin. I think he ends up being the starter. Jarris Walker, my second highest own. TJ McConnell, my third highest own. And then Jared McCain's probably just going to go by the wayside if Joel Embiid plays, and I'm just going to jam Joel Embiid as my other center. But, yeah, Zubats I can't do on FanDuel.
Yeah, not for me. Not for me. Already wants to know, who are the best single entry plays at each position for tonight? All right, so best single entry plays at each position, starting at point guard. That's going to be TJ McConnell for me, Eric.
Yeah, it's TJ McConnell. I know that it's popular and you're looking for like a contrarian piece at every spot. We won't do that. I'll give you the contrarian piece. It's at center. So there you go.
All right. Shooting guard. This is one that really changes in a significant way, because right now it's by default Jared McCain, but if Joel Embiid plays, I wouldn't want to play McCain in a single entry, but as of right now, I would definitely feel like I have to.
Correct. I would play him in single entry right now.
At small forward, I mean, Jarris Walker.
I mean, you just play him. Free
at
square.
Power forward, Obi Toppin. And then at center, I'll say, boy, there's so many options to go. I'll say Pascal Siakam.
Pascal Siakam looks good. Joel Embiid, we just had this conversation. That's kind of why it's fresh on my mind. I'm just playing a lot of Cat. I have so much Indy that I'm sure I'll be able to mix and match and make it work to get to more. I think the other guy at center, we've just brought it up repeatedly, Jakob Poeltl, he's good chalk. I think he's a good chalk center option for single entry.
The next question that we have here, it is from Gua wants to know, can we play Obi Toppin and Jarris Walker in the same lineup? Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, you may.
Yeah,
you're welcome.
0-0. Not only can you, you should.
Probably, yes.
You should. Most of my lineups will have both of them.
Yes.
The next question, it is from, by the way, Luis Heel, the AL Rookie of the Year. So
that's my boy.
No real massive surprises there. No real massive surprises. Next question is from Jaw1224 is asking us, in a large field single entry GPP, is a Pacers Raptors game stack with McCain and Towns viable? Yes. Larson 407, any thoughts on Trace Jackson Davis on FanDuel? Not necessary.
Not at all.
Yeah, not at all needed for today.
So I got a 6.5 point prop every week or every day, and I bet it, but I never play him in DFS.
Next question here. It is from G Doe. He says he's only playing 2 lineups. Are there any particular teams or games he should fade? I don't know that I look at any spots as being must fade for 2 lineups. Do you?
Yep. No, I never look at it that way. No.
Next spot is also Kobe Bryant II. How many Pacers is too many in a lineup? Yeah, if you're hand building a lineup, I wouldn't play more than 4.
Nor would I.
The next question, it is from Smitch926. He wants to know, Franz and Grayson Allen or Fred VanVleet and Jaden Ivey on DK? Franz and Grayson Allen for me.
Franz and Grayson Allen.
Next question. It is from Devon Sellers. Said, thoughts on Ivy? Sims are giving him a lot. Yeah, Eric and I were just talking about it. We like Ivy.
Yeah, I think Ivy is more intriguing now with the potential of, because again, you can't retroactively add more Jaden Ivey to your lineups. That's the whole point.
Gator Nation wants to know, who are we fading with high ownership on DraftKings? It's very rare there's a player who's really popular on DraftKings that I outright fade. If Joel Embiid plays, something that Eric and I have talked about a few times here, if Joel Embiid plays, my exposure to McCain will go down, but he won't be a fade for me. I'll just have less of him than what I have now.
Yep, same.
Next question. It is coming to us from M. Grizzly. Wants to know, how much Toppin is too much Toppin. I'm okay with 100% of top. I have 88% of Obi Toppin, but if you said you were playing 100, I wouldn't have an issue with it.
I currently have 100. It can change.
Next question. It is from JEW. Thoughts on Pacers plus Cade plus... Okay, there's a lot of things going on here. Thoughts on Pacers plus Cade plus Hart / Bridges / OG for DK single entry with all the minutes the Knicks are getting. All right, so he's playing the Pacers guys, Cade Cunningham plus Hart Bridges. I don't see anything in issue with any of those individual players.
Didn't sound bad to me.
Yeah, I say ride with it. Ride with it there.
Let's ride.
That has us all caught up on the questions, super chats. We've all got those out of the way as well. If you guys haven't done it, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We got about 90 seconds left here, Eric. Any final thoughts, comments about the slate before we head into lock?
This is the weirdest feeling that I've had about like a team that's just going to do something stupid and ridiculous. Like, I could just see James Johnson getting rolled out. I could just see something stupid happening before lock, but more than likely, I feel really, really good about the 100% top and feel pretty good about almost 100% Walker here at the moment. The big thing is just paying attention to McCain. If Joel Embiid plays, I'm going to love him in like 20 max type formats. In 150, maybe not as much. I don't feel like I have to just be jamming him, but he would look amazing as a tournament play. It is so rare that you get a guy like that coming in after lock, showing up at 1-2% with all the value that we have. So I'd find ways to him. Otherwise, yeah, I think we did a great job of breaking things down. We're still waiting on that starting lineup, though. So you're going to want to jump over to, to the Discord if you guys have Stokastic subs here so we can cover everything. The NFL show, obviously, is coming up. So make sure you're tuning in for that, too.
There we go. Yeah, guys, if you haven't done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you do have questions, I'll be hanging out in Discord for a little bit, just in case the event comes that we get Joel Embiid playing or we get a weird starting lineup for the Pacers. I mean, I'm going to be updating my lineups anyway. So if you have questions, hit me up in Discord. Other than that, guys, good luck with your lineups. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Peace out.